Ladies and gentlemen, our referee has called a stop to this contest, declaring the winner by knockout and new MMA show!
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting round of and new MMA show. I'm your host, Michael Hansen, and I do exciting things with microphones because I'm a ring announcer, and I'm joined this week, as I always am, by my two co-hosts who bring MMA punditry to new heights. Introducing to you first, from New York, Mark Priaulx. What's up, my friend?
What is up, my friends? It is late. I'm having a day. Came here straight from the city. Didn't get to go home and get my usual paraphernalia. So I just, this little corner going tonight. I have no hat. So I'm under the hot sun of this light. And we're off.
All right. Glad you're here in one piece. And now introducing to you from Florida, the Sunshine State, he is the Nicaraguan nightmare, Omar Artola. What's up, buddy?
What's going on? Rocking a UFC Orlando shirt, baby, because
That was a good crowd.
yo, I should. So I guess I'll go into it just a little bit. So for those of you who don't know, I did go to the UFC Orlando card in person. I went with my wife and my brother-in-law. We had section 108 seats, so we were really good seats, short of being on the floor. The crowd is ridiculous, and it's the one thing I keep forgetting about UFC events is how fucking stupid people really are, and how wild the whole. How much I want to get into a fight when I'm there because of how stupid people are. Like, example, guys behind me, as soon as somebody got taken down, and I mean, the dude's ass probably hasn't even hit the floor yet. Every time it happened, guys yelling out, "Stand him up, ref!" And it was driving me up the fucking wall. You had other ones that were yelling at Keith Peterson, "Just let him fight. Let him fight, ref." Keith Peterson is literally letting them fight. It was just little, and this was going on for hours. This was not like this happened in one fight. This was happening for every fucking fight, and I was there from the third fight all the way through. So there were bits of it that were a long night. There was also a wave. People at the UFC, when you go to these events, do the wave. When a fight gets boring,
I saw the wave on TV, and I was like, "Oh, come on, people, we're better than this."
We're definitely not. We're definitely not. Because you want to know how much not better we are at it. Not only were they doing the wave, but they also got so bored with the wave itself that everyone started to turn on their flashlights and do the wave.
I saw that.
Yeah,
bro.
It was a wave? What was up with that? Like it was a concert.
I can't. And it was going on during the Angela Hill fight. I remember that specifically. And I think they got to a point where they just didn't care about the fight anymore. And so they all just started doing the wave. Because people there, it's not a bad fight. But a lot of people who go to these fights want to see murder.
Right. They want to see violence.
And if they're not watching a murder, they're doing the wave, apparently. It was incredible.
Cell phones, it looked like a Sarah McLachlan concert.
Yes. It was very weird, but always entertaining. Fight quality A+.
I don't love going. I've actually only been to one UFC in person with Mark back in the day. It was the Nate Diaz versus Cowboy Cerrone fight. We went with our friend Rob at the
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Long time ago. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But it's just like at fights, and now I'm in fights all the time now. But also, I do a lot of Muay Thai now, but MMA is a little different. People get rowdy with MMA. Like, there's a little too much testosterone in the building.
Agree. And there's too many idiots, like people who don't even understand MMA, but they want to talk like they know what's happening.
It's for a very similar reason, I don't even love going to bars to watch MMA, to watch UFC.
I was going to say that. Mike, you said it before where you're sitting down at a bar, and I've told you this like with me too, when I go to Wild Wings and I sit down, and for whatever reason, and it must be my ignorance to the bar scene and how I guess guys are naturally attracted to talking to other guys because of sports.
Yeah.
I'm not that fucking guy. I will never just start talking to somebody about shit out of the blue. But guys do that when I go to the bar and when I'm watching fights, and they'll start talking to me like they know about fights, and immediately it's like listening to somebody explain a fucking motorcycle that they've never been on. It's the weirdest thing.
They will
spend
inevitably
half your night telling the fat guy why he wouldn't beat up Demetrius Johnson.
right. Or like someone will
Honestly-
eventually say, like whoever is on the screen fighting, somebody will be like, he just fought Liddell, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, it'll be like,
I'll entertain it to a certain point because there's sometimes where there's genuine interest, and then they start saying stupid shit, and then I just smile and nod, and I just don't talk to them the fuck anymore. I just can't do it.
all right, well, let's try to get into this episode here, boys. We could talk about our bar stories all night long. Well, folks, let's run through this. We have a stacked episode to talk about. We're going to start things off as we always do with our first segment on the marquee. We're going to talk about all the fights, or if not most of the fights, from this past weekend's UFC Fight Night, Thompson versus Holland. We're going to dive into our Priaulx rankings, find out who rose and who fell in Mark's very own rankings system. We're going to check out some of the main fights from this past weekend's One Championship action, and we're going to look ahead to Bellator action as well as UFC this coming weekend, UFC pay-per-view and Bellator 289. We're also going to find out what's new in the headlines at MMA, going inside the MMA sphere with Omar, and then we might end with a little bit of trivia. Before we get into any fight talk, gentlemen, let us first thank our audience. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, first of all, thank you so much. Like our video, share this video with people who you know who love MMA and might not yet know about our show. If you agree with any of our takes, let us know down in the comments. If you disagree with any of our takes, let us know down in the comments. We always appreciate that thoughtful conversation. If you want audio only, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, find us on social media at the handle @andnew_MMA show in all the places. Okay, let's get into this show. This week, the name on the marquee has got to be Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, who this past weekend, on Saturday, December 3rd at the Amway Center in Orlando, Florida, defeated Kevin Holland by TKO via corner stoppage after the fourth round ended. Whew, what a fight this was. People were calling it already a fight of the year candidate pretty much the night that it ended. Fight of the night honors for both of these guys. Mark, let me throw it over to you first. What was your reaction of the way the fight ended at the end of the fourth round and of the performances of both these men overall?
I'm going to be the Debbie Downer on this one. As much as it was a great fight and it was a fun fight, and I get why people are talking up and all that, I can't feel any other emotion than how fucking annoyed I am with Kevin Holland that he had the biggest opportunity of his life, and he goes in there and he's like, no, I'm not touching the ground. I'm just going to have a striking contest with, of all people, Stephen Thompson. Like, it's not easy being a fan of Kevin Holland. Like, the first round of the fight was fun, and they're scrapping, and they're going back and forth, and Holland is hanging with him on the feet. And I'm like, wow, this is awesome. But I am figuring at some point here we're going to work in some grappling and clinches and scrambles and whatever because he's fighting Stephen Thompson. Never am I thinking we're going to go 25 minutes here in a friggin' striking battle. And then come rounds 2 and 3, and in both rounds, there is some type of transition where they hit the ground, and Kevin Holland is on top and in control. And both times he's like, no, up, and gets off Stephen Thompson and lets him up. And I'm like, is this really what we're doing? Like, in the biggest opportunity of Kevin Holland's life where he can win and be ranked top 10 and be in huge fights and finally get to, like, where we all think his talent should be in terms of the level that he's at. And I get it. Like, I get it that the guy is an entertainer and he loves to be that guy and that he probably wants to see if he can beat Stephen Thompson on the feet. But you only get so many opportunities in this sport. And like I said, it's Stephen Thompson. Like, if there was ever a guy who you're like, okay, maybe I should at least try grappling at one point, the guy is Stephen Thompson. So, plus, then we learn later that the issues with his hand started in round 1. So it's like, all right, sure, you wanted to exchange with him, but then when you break your fucking hand in round 1, it's all right if you mix in some grappling. So I don't know. I can't shake just how annoyed I am that Kevin Holland let this opportunity slip through his fingers because he wanted to be an entertainer. And again, I get it, and who am I? If that's what he wants to be, that's what he wants to be. I just see the talent in him. I feel like there's a level that he can reach that he is not reaching. So that's like my main takeaway thought that I can't get out of my brain for this fight. But, of course, I want to give props to Stephen Thompson as well. That dude went in there and scrapped. He ate shots, especially in round one. He ate quite a few big shots, kept going. And, you know, he got himself a straight striking match. And to the surprise of absolutely nobody who pays attention, he shined. Like, I've seen a fair amount of, like, almost surprise takes coming out about this fight, which I don't get. Like, oh, man, like, wow, Stephen Thompson was back. Stephen Thompson looked incredible. Like, that's Stephen Thompson. That's what he does. That's what he's always done. If you fight his fight with him, you go 25 minutes on the feet with that guy. That's exactly what he's going to do every time. That's not, in no way am I surprised by that development. So, you know, he looked awesome, of course, and it's a big win career-wise for him in terms of where he was at. But it's also a massive missed opportunity career-wise for Kevin Holland.
Agreed. Omar, agree, disagree? What was your take on the performances of both Holland and Wonderboy?
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I mean, the fight was great. I really enjoyed the fight. Being there live, the energy and all that electricity was palpable, to say the least. But you couldn't help feeling like, and so I should mention in the moment, I remember thinking that in round 3, after he caught a spinning heel kick to the hand, I thought that's when he broke his hand. And so from round 3 on, I thought that was when he was compromised. 1 and 2 had never even occurred to me that he had hurt his hand. So it was a little bit different, I guess, through that lens at that moment, because to me, that is when he started to kind of wrestle, or at least attempt to start going for the wrestling, kind of at the beginning of round, or the end of round 3, beginning of round 4, that kind of deal. Found out later, you know, looking at highlights and stuff later on, he started talking to Wonderboy and saying, you know, I got to do what I got to do. But I can't help but also kind of be annoyed, because if you did break your hand in the first round, to me, that's like the prime reason to be like, okay, whatever gentleman's agreement we had to not take each other down kind of goes out the window when I'm fighting with one hand. True. So, because at that point, it's not really a proper striking match anymore, is it? It's the man's broken. So, to me, it changes the dynamic a little bit. He eventually took him down anyway, so the idea that you let him up earlier also is stupid.
He never took him down. What do you mean?
Or they got down to the ground at a couple points.
Oh, there were a couple points where he intentionally let him up.
But that's my point, is you were already compromised, and then eventually you tried to take him down later on in the fight anyway, couldn't do it in the first place, and so the moments where you did have him down on the ground almost now seem even more ridiculous that you let him up.
Yes.
So there is a lot of frustration in that specific thing. When it comes to Wonderboy, everyone should fucking pray to have counters like that man. Pray to have timing like that man. The way he's able to read people come in, manage his distance, and blast that left hand the way that he does, or frankly the right hand, because he's so good at switching stances. But it's really a wonder to watch it and how many times he does it. And I don't even want to say there's no power behind it, because there's definite power behind those strikes. Kevin Holland ate a lot of shit, and he's definitely got a chin for sure.
He's known for eating shots.
Those straight shots, those straight counter shots were nasty, man. They were very, very nasty. And of course, the kicks, again, one can only pray to have kicks like that and mix them into their combos like that. He gave Wonderboy a platform to shine, and Wonderboy did just that.
It was a striker's delight. I mean, this is why the UFC brought Stephen Thompson into the fold for fights like this, for moments like this. And, he's coming off back-to-back losses against, who was it? Bilal and Burns.
And Burns, yeah.
And, man, to your point, Mark, it's hard to be a Kevin Holland fan. It's like, I'm such a fan of his. But I thought of this analogy when you said that. Being a Kevin Holland fan is kind of like what it's been like to be a Knicks fan for the past, 10 years. It's like you love them. But then sometimes you're just like, as a franchise, you're like, what are they doing? Yeah. That's like I feel like a Kevin Holland. It's like I love him, but it's like, what is he doing?
Yeah.
Like he could be so much better. He could not be. He is as good as he is, but like his choices,
His results could be so much better. Yeah.
his results.
Yeah. For sure.
That's all.
And you do have to give Kevin Holland credit because he dropped Wonder Boy, or at least that. I can't remember if he actually dropped him or if he at least rocked him. But I mean, he tagged him. He definitely put the paws on him, and a lot of people don't touch Wonder Boy throughout 5 rounds, 3 rounds.
Yeah.
People don't touch him a lot of the time. So, got to give him credit, man.
And I thought, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
I think his hand broke probably when he hit Thompson on the forehead. That almost dropped him. That was like square
I
on
would
the forehead
imagine.
punch.
Could be.
Yeah.
And I thought he could hang with Thompson on the feet
Same.
because of how kind of tricky he's not like this clean striker. He's awkward. He's long. He takes weird angles, but also because of how he can mix it up, and that Thompson would have to be thinking about that. As the fight went on, and Thompson realized, okay, this dude is never trying to clinch me or grab me in any way, you kind of lose your ability to be a little awkward, and you lose an edge that you had. So he took it away from himself.
Absolutely.
We should also give credit, because no one ever does, to the corner of Kevin Holland for stopping that fight when they did. Because they could have definitely, like 98% of the other coaches I think out there would have definitely been like, listen, man, you got to do something. You got 5 minutes. I know your hand's fucked up. You might never use it again, but you know what? This is your opportunity, man. Go out there. You might never carry your kid, but fuck that. Go out there, win that fight. And he would have went out there, and the end of the 4th round, where he was basically turtled up against the cage, taking wild shit from Stephen Thompson, would have just continued for another 5 minutes, and it might have been even significantly worse than where we ended in the 4th round. So kudos to his corner for doing the right thing at the right time.
Yeah, he was against the cage because he knew he could roll there, and he knew he was so defenseless that he was going to get caught if he didn't at least have that ability to roll. If he was out in the open, he was going to get caught.
Yeah, he couldn't even move his arm. His arm was down. It was like by his side. It was the right call to make to end that fight.
Let's talk about where these two gentlemen go from here. So we have the winner, Stephen Thompson, the 39-year-old South Carolinian. He gets back in the win column, like I said, after 2 straight losses against Burns and Bilal. He's now 17-6 as a pro. This was his 8th knockout/TKO. Mark, at welterweight, he's been around here for a minute. I mean, I think he's been in the UFC for close to a decade now. I think he came in when he was like 30, and now he's almost 40. And who else is there left for him to fight at welterweight? Still in the top 10.
2012 he came to the UFC. I had to look it up. So, yes, well done.
Wow.
So, he threw this out there. I don't know what the hell Jorge Masvidal is ever doing. He's a very hard guy to put a finger on of who he may fight and when he may fight. But obviously they have fought before. Stephen Thompson won a decision. He is saying he'd love to fight Jorge again. I know Jorge talks a lot about how he should be fighting Leon Edwards and whoever else, but if we're being honest, Jorge is not getting that fight right now. So I think this fight actually makes a lot of sense. It's a chance for Jorge to get a loss back. Maybe he'd be into that. At least he would reignite some momentum, and then maybe he is getting a bigger fight like he's talking about. So I think that makes sense. If that doesn't happen, the other name I heard Wonderboy throw out was Michel Pereira, which I'd be down for too, because that just seems like a wild fight.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That'd be cool.
I'll take that all day. Absolutely.
You second that?
Also, I would second that. I will also point out that Leon Edwards versus Jorge Masvidal will totally happen if Usman pulls out like a week before. Jorge will be fucking in there like swimwear. They will sell the shit out of it. It'll be a spectacle. And that is how Jorge gets another title shot.
That's a great point. He's probably in shape, hoping for that opportunity.
Yep, he's waiting.
Yeah.
Let's move on quickly to Kevin Trailblazer Holland, 30-year-old from California. His second straight loss now, and his record drops to 23-9. Wow, still a great record for Holland. Give me a name, Omar, at welterweight. If he is going to keep fighting at welterweight, a lot of interesting matchups because he's brand new to the weight division. So who do you think would be interesting for him next?
I like him at welterweight, to be honest. I think what really set him back in this Stephen Thompson fight was not ability. It was not technique. It was not. It was fight IQ. It was the choices that he made in the cage that led him to where he went. But I do not think that skill for skill, he is not able to beat Wonderboy Thompson. Even now, I would probably still pick him to beat him in an MMA match. What he tried to fight him in is what he did end up fighting him in was essentially a kickboxing fight. And I would never have picked Kevin Holland to win a kickboxing fight against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. So with that being said, I do want to see Kevin Holland still climbing the rankings. I wouldn't imagine he drops very low in the rankings. We'll go to the Priaulx rankings for that later on, I would assume. But I want to see him against Daniel Rodriguez. I think D-Rod is a good test for him. I think that skill for skill, they would be very fun, very entertaining. They're very complementary to one another. And I think D-Rod, coming off of a loss, also needs a nice name to win off of. And I think this is an opportunity for him to do that too.
I like it a lot. Mark, any other ideas?
So I'll tell you his ranking now because he's not someone who really moved off of this. He is my number 21 ranked welterweight. So he's kind of in that group of guys who are just outside of these rankings. I'm assuming he is in a similar spot in the UFC because he's not in the top 15, but I assume he's not far out of it. So he's 21 in mine, and another guy who is right in that area, or two guys, one of whom I was going to say is D-Rod. I think that's a great matchup. I think it makes a lot of sense. I actually think he is ranked in the UFCs. I think he's 15th in the UFCs.
15, I think so, yeah.
And another one is the Leech, Li Jingliang. I think, and you know, who knows how long Holland is going to be out for with this hand injury, but I think him against another guy who's kind of right at the edge of these rankings is where Kevin Holland should be fighting right now.
Yeah, we should actually mention that Kevin Holland did break his third, fourth, and fifth metacarpals.
Oh, 3. Damn.
Yeah.
And there's physical bone displacement as well. So his hand is fucked. Yeah. He's definitely going to need surgery. They've already said he's going to need surgery for it. So he might be done for 2023, or at least the majority of it.
He'll probably retire at least once between now and whenever he fights again.
God, it's such a fucking brutal sport. And what a brutal fight that actually, it really was.
Yeah.
And the irony, too, there's a little bit of irony that's like, because it's against the backdrop of like two of the nicest fucking guys to ever like step into the cage together. They like basically made out like when the bell rang, and like the whole time they're like talking nicely to each other the whole time.
I would love to hear Bisping's commentary, because I realized afterwards that I didn't hear any commentary, obviously, while I was there. So Bisping tends to hate that shit. He hates people like hugging and high-fiving during the fight, and they were doing that for 5 or 4 rounds. So I would imagine how much Bisping was losing his fucking mind on that broadcast.
I feel like he didn't say that much, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
I will
he
say
hates it, man. I've heard him just go off about it in the past.
For my own part, as much as I hate unsportsmanlike shit, like when a guy goes for a fist bump as like a sportsmanship, but then like fakes it and like goes for a punch or like ducks under, I fucking hate. That's garbage to me.
Oh yeah.
On the other side of it,
go to jail.
Yeah, for sure. On the other side of the spectrum here, I actually really don't like it when guys show
I don't either.
so much love in the fight. I'm like, stop. You gotta fight right now.
I think there are appropriate moments, but Kevin Holland and Stephen Thompson were doing it like every other exchange. It's a bit much. Beginning of the round, you want to give him a hug or something, like that's cool, but let's get to work. You know what I mean?
I don't like round 1 hug. I also don't like the start of round 5 hug. Get it out of here. I don't like it.
Okay.
I saw Cheeto tweet something along the lines of like, enough of the fucking high-fiving, and I was like, thank you, Cheeto.
Of course you would. Yes. Like high five and hug after the fight. I love seeing that. When the sportsmanship comes out, when the fight's over, love it. But in the fight, I don't like it. Okay.
I don't mind it at the beginning of a round.
I don't mind it before strikes are exchanged. Like,
right.
Tuivasa and Pavlovich did it. They walked out, they hugged each other, and they said, all right, time to fight. If it is before the fight begins, Totally fine. When that fight is happening, I want to see fucking Robbie Lawler, Rory McDonald level stare downs between rounds.
Yeah.
I would actually be more annoyed if they started fucking hugging at the beginning of rounds 2, 3, and 4. Like, either hug at the beginning, very beginning of the fight, and then if you want, hug at the very end of the fight, like before the last round begins, if you want. But like to just hug every fucking round, like I don't need this.
The start of the 5th, I can live with. It's like, all right, we've been through 20 minutes of war. I respect you. Quick hug.
Let's go.
I live with it. But the whole in between rounds shit, I can't.
Yeah. The in between rounds drives me crazy.
Okay, and another very sportsman-filled contest, also in the welterweight division, in the co-main event of this fight night, Rafael dos Anjos said, "Y'all must have forgot," and he finished Bryan Barbarena by submission via neck crank at the 3-minute 20-second mark of round number 2. Omar, let me throw it over to you first this time. What was your take of RDA getting it done? And honestly, he kind of dominated Bryan Barbarena. What are your thoughts?
I feel like I'm not 100% surprised at all. I mean, when we talked about it last week, I think we talked about the technique of RDA, the championship caliber of RDA. And as much as we love Bryan Barbarena, I think we all would agree that Bryan Barbarena is a fun guy to watch. There is just levels to this game. And I think RDA is just on a level at this point where Bryan Barbarena is vastly far from. Obviously, in a fight, anything can happen, but all the signs pointed to RDA beating the shit out of Bryan Barbarena. And it was a great performance from RDA. I mean, he mixed it up fantastically. His control on the ground was A+. His aggression in general was the kind of shit you want to see from RDA. He does not always give you these types of performances, it must be noted. So it was great to see him at his peak. And do as well as he did against Barbarena. And lastly, things that don't happen very often are the most A+ fucking call-outs in the UFC. And RDA, of all people, is kind of horrible at call-outs. But goddamn, did my man have either a friend or a manager or somebody on his team that knew to tell him to do this, because the call out of Conor McGregor in this day, in this era, was probably the most perfect call out ever.
So? What was so great about it?
I think the timing is 100% perfect. RDA is now at 170. You've got the history of them having to have fought at 155 and not getting the chance to because RDA's foot was a balloon or whatever the hell happened to him. And then I think that was the Chad Mendes, right? That was when he first.
No, that was he was supposed to come up and try to become double champ against RDA, and then he fought Nate instead when RDA got hurt. And then his later double champ attempt was the Eddie one.
Eddie Alvarez one. Okay. So there's history there, right? And like I said, RDA at this point is a 170 pounder. I can't see that man dropping down to 155. Conor McGregor is like 195 pounds right now. So I can only imagine that at this point, when he does fight, when he's not pissing red hot, he will eventually go down to 170. And I just think that fight makes so much sense, especially for a guy like Conor McGregor, who's all about the numbers and this and that. I think it works, man.
You think so, huh?
I don't know if RDA drives numbers. I think it works storyline-wise. And we've said that on this show before. We've talked about that matchup a few times of how we think it's a matchup that makes sense. But I don't know if it does enough numbers for Conor to say. I mean, everything he does is going to do numbers. But, like, compared to him and Chandler, it's not – I don't think it's the same.
Sure.
But as for RDA, yeah, I am 0% surprised that went that way. I said – I thought the grappling would be all the difference. I said third round finish. It ended up being the second round. But, yeah, that was like clockwork. RDA came in. He did what he does. And when he comes in with a grappling game plan and he's fighting someone who can't stop it, it's just like, oh, my God. Like, I remember he did the same thing to Paul Felder. And it was like, it just feels so inevitable. Like, you watch it and you're like, this poor guy. Like, what? How can he stop this? Like, he's so like I said, it's like clockwork. It's just step by step, and you're in more trouble and more trouble, in a worse position and a worse position, and there's no stopping him. If you don't have the if you're not someone who has the requisite grappling to counter that, and Barbarena is not. So, did I think it'd be slightly more competitive? Maybe I thought there'd be a couple interesting exchanges on the feet. But yeah, the RDA kind of walks through him there, and then I agree. I think it was a great job for him to shoot his shot. Obviously, it's a massive call out. Again, I don't know if he gets it, but the storyline is there, and if they want something that comes with like a promo video of, bad blood needs to be settled, that type of thing to get Conor back in the fold, it checks the boxes. So and like Omar said, he is back at 170 now, so you never know. But I respect that he is out there shooting his shot, even though he had kind of said like, oh, I'm here for the fun fights now. Maybe my title aspirations are done. And then he's like, nah, fuck that. I want to fight Conor McGregor.
Well, that's not title aspirations.
I mean,
shit, so your bank account it is.
I think if he beats Conor McGregor, he gets in a huge fight, don't you?
For sure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's not Bryan Barbarena.
Who do you like in that fight? Just curious at this point. I'm not talking about back in what must it have been, 2015 or 16?
I'm
gonna be honest, man. At 170 pounds, I probably would still pick McGregor because RDA is not a 185er or a 170 pounder that like, he's a 155er that went up. It's very similar to McGregor, and McGregor's power, I think, against somebody who is around his height and his size, even at 170 pounds, I think he smashes him. To be honest, and I do think that Conor McGregor's ground game is heavily underrated, and I think it's because Khabib fucking ended up working him, and Chad Mendes took him down as many times as he did. But I would really challenge you guys to go watch both of those fights back and really watch the ground game and the approach from McGregor. And while he does get worked by Khabib had to work to get him there. There was a lot of very good exchanges between the two of them when it came to the grappling that if you watch Khabib against other guys, does not happen. So I do think that his grappling and his takedown defense specifically is kind of fucking legit and always has been. So I don't think RDA gets him down as easily as he did Bryan Barberena. So I would give it to McGregor personally.
Yeah, I don't need to rewatch anything. I've always been on team underrated grappling for Conor, and especially through the years. I think the losses only made him improve it more. If you remember, I was saying, it was ages ago, so you probably don't. But back on our first episode of the show, I was making the point of how well I thought Conor did off his back against Poirier. Like he's a dangerous dude off his back. He can be tricky down there.
Wow. Was that our first show? Was it the Conor Poirier fight?
99% sure, unless I'm wrong, but I think so. I can tell you in a second.
We'll find
actually.
out.
But
we'll find out.
But yeah, it's a tricky one. Like him getting out wrestled by RDA wouldn't shock me by any means. But yeah, and obviously he's been out for a million years, which is really tough to read. But gun to my head, I'd pick Conor in that fight.
Wow.
Our first episode was Poirier McGregor 3.
I just pulled it up too. Yep.
That's the
injury one. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Fuck. That was our first episode. Wow. Okay. Let's quickly, because we're already going long, baby. Let's talk about where these guys go from here at welterweight. So Dos Anjos, a 38-year-old Brazilian, back in the win column after getting knocked out, remember, by Rafael back in July. RDA improves to 32-14 as a pro. His 11th submission victory. Mark, give me a name. What do you want to see next for RDA?
So if it's not Conor, give me Sean Brady. I would enjoy the fuck out of every aspect of that fight. I think that's a great matchup.
Yeah, it would be. Omar, same question.
Every time we think about like matching these guys up, I'm like, is this a favor RDA this matchup, or is this a favor the guy that I want to match up with RDA? Because when I look at these guys, the person I want now to fight RDA is Randy Brown. But I feel like Randy Brown might kill RDA. It's very possible. Dude, I don't know, man. There's something that's clicked, it looks like, for Randy Brown lately. And his length, his reach, and his power seem really daunting against somebody like RDA, personally. And I'm not saying RDA is not dangerous, obviously, but Randy Brown knows how to use his length.
He had a close fight with Trinaldo, and RDA is a better version of Trinaldo, pretty much. Not saying I wouldn't consider picking Randy Brown, but I don't see it as like he might kill RDA.
I think Trinaldo is more durable than RDA, personally. And I kind of feel the same way about Gleison Tebow. Like, Gleison Tebow I don't think is better than RDA, but I do think he's a fucking cinder block. You know what I mean?
I love that you thought of Trinaldo, and then your brain just immediately went to Tebow because they're like the same shape.
They're the same thing.
Okay, let's talk about Barbarena. Give me a name, Omar, for Mr. Bryan Barbarena.
So Bryan Barbarena, I would imagine, too, hasn't really moved from the rankings, considering I don't think RDA was ranked in welterweight recently. So I would imagine he probably sticks around the same. So if we're still looking for a fight for him to shine in, I think him against Max Griffin would make a lot of sense.
Like it.
Rankings-wise, I would imagine they're probably around the same. And skill for skill, I think it would be a banger of a fight. Both of those dudes go in there to scrap.
Okay, Mark, give it to me.
I will go Nico Price. That feels like a fight that we should have seen at least 25 times by now.
Great fight. Wow, love that fight.
Yeah. Fucking poor Nico. We'll get there, but poor Nico.
All right, let's try to do these a little quicker because we got a lot to do.
Okay. In the flyweight division, Matheus Nicolau knocks out Matt Danger Schnell. Round 2, 144 with punches. Mark, go first.
Woo, baby. Nicolau put it on Matt Schnell bad. He is a fantastic counter fighter. He's so patient that sometimes he kind of appears boring in there, but he knows how to walk you into shots. He's not going to rush anything. In this fight, he had a Matt Schnell who's kind of an aggressive guy, and it all came together over and over again. Anytime Schnell entered range, he was in danger. He ate some big ones, went down a couple times, and we know how tough and resilient Matt Schnell is, and he got truly put out at the end of that. So to do that is a big statement for Nicolau as a contender going forward in the flyweight division.
Omar, your thoughts?
It was a little weird because I almost felt like there were moments where Schnell was gifting him a lot of these openings and a lot of these opportunities to get hit. After the first few counters, you would think that you would kind of adjust and not allow yourself to run into such heavy shots, because Nicolau has some wild heavy shots. But he never really did. I don't know if there was a weight cut thing or whatever, because if you don't know, Matt Schnell had to shave what hair he did have in order to officially make weight. So I don't know if this weight cut was just more difficult and hampered his performance. But regardless, Nicolau took full advantage of it, man, and he really put a beating on Matt Schnell. Dropped him a few times, I want to say. But nasty performance from Nicolau.
Yeah, man. You guys want to match them up, or you just want to, for the sake of time, want to move on?
I'll give you both in the 20 seconds. I really want to say the winner of Cara France and Alex Perez for Nicolau, especially if it's Cara France, because it feels like it's like a big fight, and I feel like that's what Nicolau deserves. But then I saw that fight is not until February, so if we're not going to wait, we could go with your boy Brandon Royval. And then for Schnell, I was going to say, how about Tim Elliott? Like, those two in a cage feels like another thing that kind of should have happened by now. That would be Scramble Fest.
Love it.
Yeah. That'd be like one of those little cartoons with the dust cloud.
Yeah, literally.
Okay. Let's see. Who is next? Oh, we're going to have to take a moment for this one, boys. In the heavyweight division, Sergei Pavlovich takes out Bam Bam Tuivasa by knockout. I thought it was a TKO, but I guess maybe he did kind of put him out. In the very first round, under a minute, official time, 54 seconds of round number 1. Omar, talk about it.
See, if you want to know who was really upset from this fight, it was my wife. My wife was not having it in this fight. And I looked over before this fight, and everybody around me, of course, like we just talked about, it's like, yeah, Ty's going to whoop this kid's ass. And I'm looking down. I'm looking at the guys in front. I'm looking at the guy to the side of me, looking at my wife. I'm like, you guys all know that Tuivasa is about to fucking die right now, right? Like, you guys know this. Pavlovich is an absolute animal. And I didn't see it in 30 seconds or 45, whatever it ended up being. But I knew Pavlovich was going to wreck Ty. I just knew it. And it ruined the crowd. It ruined the momentum of the crowd. Everyone was kind of pissed off after that. It was a real downer in the stadium. But and poor Sergei, bro. He's trying to get the crowd hyped up. He's trying to call Orlando. He's got his translator there with him. I see him walking out of the octagon. He's got his hands up. He's looking for like a yeah. Like no, and I mean fucking nobody from the crowd is giving him any love. There was like 3 people that were in the very front row taking some pictures of him because they were in the very front row. Nobody clapped for him. Nobody gave him a pound. Nobody did shit to this man. I felt so bad for him. Like, it was messed up.
Mark,
I mean, I said it. This is why you don't put Tuivasa coming off a loss in a fight with a guy like Sergei Pavlovich, because you run the risk of getting this. And now Ty's star feels dimmed. His buzz feels crushed. You've now seen him put out pretty badly 2 fights in a row. I just, he's been a star for them. And I say this a lot about the UFC. I don't think they do a good job handling the build of their stars. It just seems like that's the last guy they ever should have matched Ty against coming off of that Gane loss. And they pay for it. And as for Pavlovich, what the fuck do we do with this guy? Like, he is scary. You're not supposed to just walk through guys who are this good and this tough the way that Sergei Pavlovich is doing it. Like, the dude goes in there for like a hot fucking 30, 60 seconds, and he's like, all right, another one. What do I do next? Like, we need to get Overeem back over here before Pavlovich kills everybody. But, yeah, I mean, it's unreal to see Ty put out that easily. And he took a lot more damage. Maybe he went down quicker because he rushed back, like we said. I've never seen him put down that easily, but I also don't know who we've seen that is what Sergei Pavlovich is, so maybe it's just him and the power that is in his hands. But, I mean, we are here now with Pavlovich. Like, he is ready for a title eliminator. I know the top heavyweight is an absolute clusterfuck, and we say it every time there's a big heavyweight fight, but, like, he is fighting one of these top boys in the next one.
Oh, 100%. I mean, the guy just has thunder in his fucking hands, man. He just has sticks of dynamite. He is a battering ram of a human being. And to do that to a guy who has a good chin in Tuivasa, man, it just shows you, man. It's just lights out. He's just too much power. It's just too much. And it does suck. But yeah, Pavlovich now, his star is building because he's getting more and more knockouts. He's knocking everybody the fuck out. But also, he's not going to be as big of a star as Tuivasa, man, because Tuivasa is charismatic and a fan favorite like that. Pavlovich, unfortunately, there's a big language barrier. So it's kind of, it's a barrier. It's in the way of his star growing more and more, at least in the U.S. and in English-speaking markets. But, I mean, I'm still going to watch, man. I'm still going to tune right into his fights, man. Because he is,
I'm all the way tuned in.
Don't blink heavyweight MMA. It's crazy.
For sure.
Any other names you want to throw out for Tuivasa, or you want, is the names nobody? Please go take a year off.
Well, for Sergei, I would say kind of what I just said. It's just so tough because we still have no idea what's happening at the top of this division between Ngannou being hurt and Bones being Bones and
Bones.
Stipe missing, and like Gane and Blades are both kind of there. Like, do we have to fight each other, or can we maybe get a fight with one of these top guys? So it's just like the whole thing is on pause. But if I were to pick one, just the contrast of Pavlovich fighting Cyril Gane is wildly intriguing to me.
Yeah,
so if I could choose it,
sure.
I think that's what I would do.
Any other names, Omar?
Yeah, that's so interesting. My my thought on that is actually the opposite. Curtis Blades to me would be
it's a different contract.
interest.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because it's like I'm actually very interested. I think he does well against a technical fighter. I think he could figure it out. I think there's a lot more opportunity there. But against a guy who could potentially blast double him to hell, can he get up? Can he work his way back up? Can he stop the takedown eventually? Like, so we know that Curtis Blades can be put out, but will he get the same opportunity to be put out? You know, with all the takedown and all the grappling that's going to go into that fight. So I think it's super interesting. He's fun, man. As uncharismatic as his character is, the actual, you know, him being in the actual division makes everything just a little bit more fun right now.
He's Drago. Like, I know that's Volkov's nickname. Pavlovich is Drago.
100%.
And they say that he does have wrestling, but we have not seen it at all. So I'm on board that test is worth it. I went the other way just because I'm so curious if a fighter who is as responsible defensively as Gane is could avoid that big shot, and then does Pavlovich get tired or what happens? You know, so yeah. But either way, sign me up.
Much different striking match against Gane.
And for Ty, first of all, I would like to book Ty at like a fucking B&B for some rest.
Yes.
Like a couple massages, things like that. And when he is back, again, a lot of the top of heavyweight is a KO threat. And you certainly don't want him getting knocked out twice. I mean, it's a risk against any heavyweight. But I'm literally going to like Marcin Tybura, someone like that, who is a bit less of a knockout threat, and hope Ty gets a win.
That was literally who had in my head too.
Okay, let's move on.
Sorry,
Here we go.
Sorry, Marcin. We said you had pillow hands. That's our bad. That's our bad.
Mark said a little less. Okay, in the middleweight division, Roman Dolidze defeats Jack Hermansson by TKO, 4:06 of round 2. Omar, what are your thoughts?
I stand behind my statement that I was glad I saw this fight instead of the Derek Brunson fight, because I'm pretty sure that Derek Brunson fight would not have been that exciting and would not have ended that way. Roman Dolidze, I believe at one point one of us sent a text message that said by magic, which is pretty goddamn accurate. Roman Dolidze is fun, man. I really enjoy this man. I have no idea where this kid came from. I know he's been in a few UFC fights at this point, and we gush over him, I think, every time. His aggression, his technique, his ability to kind of roll with the punches and even, you know, roll on the floor and end up in these advantageous positions. Jack Hermansson is not an easy guy to put out. He's also not an easy guy to get in a really compromised position. And if you go back and you watch that sequence where he laces his leg through to get that calf slicer, man, you could spend hours breaking down that thing and teaching that to somebody, because that is some high level shit right there. And credit to Jack Hermansson, I guess, because his leg didn't snap in half, but that is a tough motherfucker to have not tapped to that calf slicer and just eat shots until the referee was like, okay, I think I'm going to do this for you. It was an amazing performance from Dolidze. I really love watching this man fight. I was glad to have watched him fight live because it was just as crazy, if not a little bit crazier watching it live. But I really see a high ceiling for Dolidze, and I'm excited to see what's next.
Okay, Mark, give us your thoughts.
This was one of the craziest things that I have ever seen in MMA. And MMA is a sport full of crazy things. But this shit blew my mind. This man, Roman Dolidze, is a wild card. Like, he has shown multiple times now that he's one of the most opportunistic fighters that we've seen in a while. Like, what we saw him do in this fight was fucking magic. I've never seen a fighter even attempt the chain of events that this man pulled off. And not only does he attempt it, but he does it to utter perfection. So to anyone who did not see this and wants to know what we are talking about, Jack Hermansson takes Roman Dolidze down, and he's on top of him. He throws up an armbar that Jack kind of wriggles away from. He transitions it into a reverse triangle that Jack pulls out of. he immediately, as Jack pulls up and comes out and his leg raises, turns it into a leg lock as his legs slide down. Jack tries to escape that. He holds onto the ankle, folds his leg behind him. Hermansson tries to turn to face forward because now the leg is bent behind him. Dolidze immediately lunges to take his back because he knows if he can control the back that he has a calf slicer position. Gets it. He's still on bottom at this point. Uses the calf slicer and the back control to roll Hermansson over, and Hermansson is now face down, flattened out with Dolidze on his back, and with the use of only one leg to try to escape. So, in other words, he's dead, and the TKO comes soon after. So, if you did not see this fight, I tried to describe it to you as best I could, but it will pale in comparison to actually watching the thing. So go find this clip. But it's just one of the most absurd, successful chain of events I've ever seen in a fight, and I will never forget that finish.
Amen. Sticking right here, Mark, do you have a name that you want to see Dolidze go next at middleweight?
I think there's a lot of options. It depends how quick you want to push this guy. He obviously asked to welcome Chimaev to middleweight if Chimaev is truly moving up. I think they would need a bigger name for Chimaev. But you could go with him and Andre Muniz, which would be wild on the mat. I think you could give him the winner of this Till and Duplessis fight that's coming up this weekend. I even think you could say we don't have an opponent still for Marvin Vettori, and let's do that. It all depends how much they want to push this guy, but there are options. Gun to my head, if I got to choose, I think I would go with Muniz just for the grappling exchanges.
Omar, any other bright ideas?
Considering this was supposed to be Derek Brunson versus Jack Hermansson, I think Roman Dolidze versus Derek Brunson should be the next fight.
It's fair, too.
I like it. All right, gentlemen, let us enter into, finally, our lightning round. Let us begin still in the middleweight division. Eric Anders defeats
True lightning, Omar.
Okay, your responses must be the length of a tweet. Fair? Okay.
Fair.
You haven't seen my tweets, Mike.
Okay. In the middleweight division, Eric Anders defeats Kyle Dawkins by TKO, 245 of round 2. Omar, let's give it a shot.
You could definitely sign me up for that boy, Eric Anders, because that is the Eric Anders I have been waiting for God only knows how many years. Aggressive, moves forward, throwing shots. Let's fucking go, your boy. Let's do it. I loved
Mark, take it. Love that energy.
You could not have said that better. He has always felt like a guy who might be capable of fighting in that way. And instead, he always kind of does this point fight, not so aggressive style. So to see him do that, I agree. And I don't like him because I don't really like his game. And to see him do that, I was like, fuck, okay, Eric Anders, I see you right now. So yeah, that was good for him. I thought Dawkins looked awful, though. So I'm curious how much that played into it. I thought he looked truly awful. I don't know if his face did not heal from what Roman Dolidze did to it, because it seemed like every impact was just killing him. So I thought he looked pretty bad, but a nice win for Anders.
Absolutely. Okay. In the, at a catch weight of 173.5, Philip the Fresh Prince Rowe defeats Nico Price by TKO, 326 round 3. Mark, take it.
Yeah, this was a fun fight. I loved this fight. I liked seeing Nico not look as slow as he looked against Oliveira. So I don't know what was happening in that fight. I don't know if he was hurt, but he didn't look as slow. I mean, he's still not as fast as Phil Rowe, but I thought he looked more like Nico Price in that fight. So that was good to see. I thought maybe I was going to look smart as that third round was playing out. I thought Nico was going to steal that thing, but an awesome comeback within that third round by Phil Rowe, and obviously a huge finish for him and a nice name to jump him into the mix now.
Yeah, Omar.
Yeah, a real test of gas tanks there, and Philip Rowe was just able to edge it out just a little bit. The skill is nasty. The combinations against the cage to get Nico Price out of there are absolutely terrifying. It was a fun fight to watch in person. Every time strikes landed, the crowd went absolutely fucking wild. I loved every minute of this fight and would absolutely watch this again.
All right. Mark.
When ready?
Oh, my bad. Okay. Women's strawweight in the feature bout of the prelims. Angela Hill defeats Emily Ducat by unanimous decision, 30-27s across the board. Omar, take it.
It has been, I feel like, a minute since Angela Hill has cleared 3 rounds with somebody. And I'm glad that she did. She looked fantastic, I thought. I thought she looked like the significantly better fighter. And it was nice to see her have a solid win. I wish more people were paying goddamn attention to the fight in the arena. But, you know, that is what it is. People will wave when they wave.
Yeah, this one I did nail. I thought that Hill was a notch better in every area this thing would play out, and that's really exactly what happened. I couldn't see a way for Ducot to take that fight over from Hill, and it played out that way. Hill controlled it the whole time, and I agree. It was nice to see her get a no question about it 30-27 card.
Okay. In the lightweight division, Clay the Carpenter Guida gets the win by a split decision over Scott Holtzman. Let's see, 29-28 on 2 scorecards. Holtzman gets his own 29-28. Mark, sticking with you, give us your take.
Clay Guida stays winning fights that you don't think he's going to win. So props to that guy. I didn't think Holtzman looked great here either. I don't think he really looked like the guy we had watching his last few fights. Long layoff. He had said he was going to retire. So, you know, who knows where he was at. But I felt like that was a lesser version of Scott Holtzman.
Omar?
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Right after that fight happened, I remember kind of praising Clay Guida for having the fight that he had, but I also expressed that Holtzman is way better than that. Whatever happened, whatever that was, it sucks that that's his last fight to go out like that, I guess. In my head, if I was going to retire from a career like that, I'd at least like to go out on a performance, win or lose, that I know I, kind of gave everything for. And it just looked like he wasn't 100% there. He might have already had one foot out the door as it was, and maybe that's why his performance didn't really match up to what our expectations were. But Clay Guida, man, Clay Guida is serious savage to be doing what he's doing at this age and as long as he has been.
Mark,
he went.
Oh, my God. Keep doing that.
Are you drunk?
All right, in the lightweight division, Michael the Menace Johnson gets it done over Mark Casey by UD. Omar, go first.
Okay, so real quick point. Mark DeCasey did not go for as many takedowns, if any takedowns, and it stunned the whole fuck out of me. I'm over here waiting on pins and needles. When is he going to throw? When is he going to go for a takedown? Never happened. Michael Johnson kind of sunned him, I thought, for a good majority of that fight. I was very impressed with Michael Johnson being able to keep up a consistent pace for 3 rounds, being able to keep up with the aggression for 3 rounds. There's always a point in a Johnson fight where you never know if he's going to shit the bed, and he did not. And I was really happy to see that. So good on Michael Johnson.
Nice, Mark.
I'm checking something real quick because I have to counter Omar here.
Were there takedowns?
6 takedown attempts from Casey. I knew there was because I remember Mike Johnson stuffing some things. But the point remains that he did not look to make it a wrestle fest the way I expected him to. It was more once exchanges were happening that he was like, maybe I should try for a takedown here. But honestly, I think the reason you don't remember him is because MJ was stuffing them so quick. Like immediately hips back, and Casey was just like, fuck, nope, didn't get inside on that one, and he was backing away. Like it was very quick stuffs. But yeah, Michael fucking Johnson, let's go. So happy to see him get a W.
A to the men. Okay, featherweight division. Jonathan Pierce, JSP, defeats Darren the Damage Elkins by unanimous decision. Really a beating, 30-27, 30-27, and a 30-26 for JSP. Mark, sticking with you. Give us your take.
Yeah, so I said I thought the way to do it was to try to kind of fight a clean fight and lean on the distance, striking a bit, and not let it get ugly. And it didn't go that route, but it didn't matter. Pierce was just a clearly better fighter. He puts it on Elkins and still gets it done.
Omar.
It's not very often that you see a fighter be able to kind of out-wrestle or even kind of out-grit Darren Elkins, but Jonathan Pierce seemed to be a step ahead. He was faster, I thought, between the two of them. And he really kind of beat Darren Elkins, I thought, at his game. He put a real beating on Darren Elkins. Man was soaked in his own blood by the end of the fight. I thought it was a great performance from Pierce, and I thought it was a real showing of how good he is and how done Elkins might be. I don't really need to see this man continuously take damage like this. I just don't.
Damage?
Where are we?
Natan Levy.
Natan.
Okay, lightweight Natan Levy defeated Gennaro Valdez by UD 29-28, 29-28, 30-27. Mark, go first once again.
Yeah, good one for Levy, I thought. Or is it Levy? No, I'm forgetting.
I think it's Levy.
Levy. But, yeah, I thought that Valdez might be able to find that chin, but he could not. Still not convinced that Natan Levy is anything too significant, but obviously moves to 2-1, so nicely done.
Yeah. Omar?
I would agree. Out of all the fights on this card, I think this one was kind of the slowest and the least, I guess, impactful as far as the crowd entertainment was concerned. It was a solid decision. You definitely couldn't take anything away from Levy, but there wasn't too much to really get hyped up about in this fight.
Okay, featherweight Francis Marshall defeats Marcelo Rojo by knockout, 114 of round 2. Omar, give us your take.
This was a crazy little fight. I thought these two guys against each other, I thought were very even in a lot of moments, but I think where the exchanges got a little one-sided were in the actual clash. So there were moments where Marshall and Rojo would clash with one another at the same time, and Marshall was able to win those exchanges both times, dropping Rojo both times between those exchanges. The second time he got that drop, that was really the beginning of the end there, and they ended up calling the fight. But it was a very close fight up until those specific exchanges. So I'm interested to see where both of these guys go, to be honest, because both of them I thought were very, very good. Marshall just came out on top this time around.
Mm-hmm.
I think Rojo might be going home because he is 0-3 in the UFC now at this point. He needed that one. Which is interesting because I agree that he is a skilled fighter. He's had some tough matchups. He had Charles Jourdain, then he had Kyler Phillips, and now this one didn't go his way.
Oh, but, Jesus Christ.
That is how you make a debut for Francis Marshall. Big statement out of him, so we will see what he does next. I'm trying to keep it short here.
Yeah, man. Okay, last one, women's strawweight. Omar's girl, Yasmin.
He ain't keeping it short on this one.
Be short. This ain't gonna be short.
Yasmin Yaragui TKOs Estela Nunez 406 of round number 2. Mark, you go first. I'll let Omar bring us home.
Oh man, I sat back to give Omar the stage. Yeah, tough first round. I wonder how nervous Omar was. I thought Nunez won that first round, but big sequence from Yaragui. Did not take the foot off the gas in round 2 and was able to get Nunez out of there to remain undefeated. So let's hear what Omar thinks about his girl.
Okay, Omar, take it.
Yeah, that first round had me fucked up, man. I was definitely nervous in that first round. I think it was a very, very competitive fight. Nunez brought a lot more to the table than I think I gave her credit for, to be honest. And once we actually got that fight going, the hands themselves I thought were very comparable to one another. The one thing that I think Yaragui brings to the table that's unique in that weight division, and I think in a lot of women's fights in general, is that aggression. That Mexican aggression that you see in a lot of those Mexican fighters, man, she has it. And the way she can come forward, string combos together, she's not one to really pot shot, right? There's not a lot of single strikes in her game. A lot of her stuff is 2, 3, and 4 combinations. She loves the cross across. She loves moving forward during that stuff. It caught Nunez off guard a couple times, stumbled her a couple times just from her being off balance, not necessarily getting hit very clean. But when Yaragui went down, man, I thought for me personally, and I've said it before, I'll keep saying it, those moments for me, I think, are a lot more telling than a fight that just somebody runs over somebody, because you really get to see where the mettle is of that person. You get to see if they're the type of person who just sort of accepts it, stays down. Haragui went down, came right back up, took some more shots, had her guard very tight. I love her stance. Her chin is in, her arms are clenched. She has a very, very strong guard. And by the time we got out of that first round and went into the second, you could see things change a little bit. And then she's able to put the pace on Nunes and is able to get her out of there. I think there's work to be done with Haragui. I definitely think that there's some leveling up for her to do, because I think at this point there are obvious signs that if she fights somebody in the top 10, she's vulnerable to getting hurt. But I do think with a little bit of time, exposure, constant growth with right matchups, Haragui is going to be a top 5 fighter.
Amen.
Wow.
Well done, Omar. Thank you.
Thank
John.
you. Thank you.
All right, boys. That does it for this week's lightning round. Let us now dive into our Priaulx rankings. If you didn't know, Mark keeps up his own rankings system for the UFC because he's sick of it, of these rankings from the promotion. So he tracks his own. Mark, give us your update. Who has risen, who has fallen in the Priaulx rankings?
All right, 2 risers and 2 fallers this week. One of the risers comes with a little more detail behind it, though. I will start with the fallers to switch things up for once. The first one is Nico Price. He was my number 22 ranked welterweight. He falls now to number 26, so not a huge tumble, but he's kind of a guy who was always like right at the edge of those rankings. I think he was even ranked for a little bit, and he's starting to feel like a guy who's getting older and maybe starting his slide down into veteran territory a little bit more than anything that is a contender. And the other one, even more so, I guess, on that note, is Scott Holtzman. Goes from number 28 to number 36 in my lightweight ranks. And it sounds like he may be retiring. I ranked him because John Attic seemed to doubt the retirement, so we'll see if it sticks, in which case he'd be falling out. Yeah, Omar, I forgot you didn't listen to the commentary.
No, he put his gloves down in the middle of the octagon.
Oh,
though,
did
so
he?
that
I feel like
yeah.
so it must have been. For some reason, I didn't see the gloves. Maybe I.
No, yeah, he put his gloves down in the middle of the octagon, so I thought he was done.
Oh, so maybe he is then. I should pull him from the rankings in that case.
They did not give him his moment though. They said, "Fuck you, Scott Holtzman, just go home."
Yeah, I knew they must not have, because if I didn't see the gloves, it must have been over pretty quick.
Nope.
All right, and then the 2 risers. The first one, me and the UFC did agree on, which is I have Roman Dolidze moving from my number 16 middleweight to number 8, and they have him in the same spot. Debated it a little bit because he does have a loss to Trevin Giles, which is a little bit of a tough loss. Not like Trevin Giles is some bum or anything, but he's not, top 10 level fighter. So he has that loss on his resume, but I felt like it was tough to deny him with these last couple wins that he's been on. So he did move all the way up to number 8 in my middleweight rankings. And then the move with a little bit of a story behind it. Phil Rowe moves from number 47 to number 25 in my welterweight rankings. So that is the biggest move of the week. What is interesting about it is that by virtue of Phil Rowe moving to number 25, Gabe Green, who beat Phil Rowe and has only lost to Daniel Rodriguez and one other man, moves to number 24. And by virtue of that, the other man who has beaten Gabriel Green moves to number 23, and that is your boy, Ian Gary.
Wow.
Oh,
So,
shit.
Wow.
A big jump in my rankings for Ian Gary. Feels a little wild to have him at 23, but he beat Gabe Green, and Gabe Green beat Phil Rowe, so it's hard for me to say that it should not be how this stacks up right now.
Yeah. Wow. Okay,
So,
let's move on
that is
to
it.
the. Thank you, sir, for that update. Let's move on to the one championship recap from this past weekend. One gave us a double header with 2 events this past weekend. One on Prime Video 5 and one 164. We are going to recap quickly. Still, I'm going to say lightning round style. So please tweet length takes. From One on Prime Video 5, let's talk about the main event in the light heavyweight division. Anatoly Malikin defeats Rainer de Ritter. That's
Rainier, some people even say.
Rainier de Ritter by knockout, 4:35 of round number 1. Give us your take.
This is another scary man. I mean, he beat the hell out of Rainer de Ritter. He just calmly and patiently walked forward. He defended any and every takedown or clinch attempt like with literal ease. And de Ritter is known for how he will wrap himself around you and drag you down and all this. I mean, nothing was even close. And Malikin mixed his shots beautifully between the head and the body. De Ritter's body was freaking taking it. And he beat the fuck out of RDR, to put it quite simply. So sometimes it's tough to gauge just how good guys in one are if they're in a division that doesn't have anyone who's like fought other names that we know. And the heavier divisions in one kind of are that. So it's tough to gauge exactly how good RDR and now Malikin are. They're in like a little bit of a vacuum. But de Ritter is at least a solid fighter. And to beat the hell out of a guy as easily as Malikin just did, he is at least a problem. And I'm very interested to see where his career is going to go from here. And he's now a two-way champ. Granted, one of them is interim, but two-way champ nonetheless.
Okay. Omar, anything you want to add to that for Malikin getting it done over de Ritter?
I'm not entirely sure who Anatoly Malikin is. I've heard of and seen Rainer de Ritter fight before. I did not watch the event, but having watched the highlights, Malikin looks gigantic. That is a large ass human being who looks like he hits like a fucking animal. So I'm not really sure what is going on over there with those weights, but that is a gigantic ass man that was in that ring, in octagon, whatever, in there with him. So Jesus Christ.
Yeah, he's short though. That's why he's like a squat guy. I think he's 6 feet. Yeah, 6 feet.
Yeah.
So that's why.
What a tiny asshole his 6 foot.
I'm saying for light heavyweight. I'm saying.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
/ heavyweight. He's both. Yeah.
That dude is gigantic.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Okay. The other event being 164. Jared Brooks defeated Joshua Pasio by unanimous decision after all 5 rounds, winning the one strawweight world title. Mark, give us your reaction.
This one went more or less how we imagined. Jared Brooks was just the better athlete. He used the wrestling in a couple rounds where it played a big factor, but even in the rounds where he was unable to get the takedowns, he was just faster and more powerful than Pasio, to the point that the striking technique advantage of Pasio was kind of overwhelmed. So it was a tough matchup for Pasio. Brooks is a guy who can really set a pace, and he worked it. So he gets a clear win. And the Monkey God gets his first belt in a major promotion, so good for him. And he was very emotional post-fight, it was nice to see, and also to the point where I was like, fuck, dude, get yourself together. You're looking kind of stupid.
Yeah. Omar, anything to add to that?
I would just add that it was the movement. It seemed like a lot of the movement from Brooks, his lateral movement, his side to side, is really what took Pasio off his game. Couldn't find him. Landed a lot of leg kicks, but overall it was a lot more difficult for him to find him than Brooks was to find Pasio.
Yeah, man. Okay, one other result here, gentlemen. Let's see. Roberto Soldic defeats no contest, that is, against Murad Ramazanov. I can't say the name. Give us your take, Mark.
This sucked incredibly much. They hit you with the whole fucking Roberto Soldic promo video. I'm all pumped up, and then it's over in like 3 minutes. I mean, it was interesting out of the gate. Soldic did get taken down, but it was never like 100% completed. He was kind of fighting up and resisting it, and then he does fight up, and then not 10 seconds after he's up, literally the worst sounding knee to a cup that I think I have ever heard. Like, the sound was so bad. Like, I was literally like, what? I wasn't even sure that the sound was a cup. It was like such a unique sound, and I was not surprised that he did not get up. So yeah, fucking major buzzkill for the debut of Roberto Soldic.
Sucks. Anything else to add, Omar? Or do you want to move on?
We can move on. Nut shots at this point after having my own experience. I'm not doing it.
All right, that does it for one. Now let us turn inside the MMA sphere, find out what's going on in the world of MMA outside of the cage. Omar, take it away. What have you got for us?
We have got a few different stories for you today and just a handful of fight announcements, so let's get right into it. At the top of the list here, big news. TJ Dillashaw has officially retired from professional MMA. This has come off the back of his latest loss to Aljamain Sterling and obviously the shoulder injury that he had. For those of you who are unaware, didn't watch the fight or whatever, his shoulder was just popping out. It popped out a couple times after one takedown, and it just didn't allow him to fight properly in the fight against Aljo. Come to find out, the shoulder injury is really, really bad. It might need a couple of different surgeries when it's all said and done in order for it to heal properly. We're looking at a timeline that's extremely long. It could be a couple of years. TJ Dillashaw is no spring chicken at this point. He's also has, the history with the cheating and this, that, and the other. But more so, his health seems to have really been on the line here. My wife actually put it in a very interesting way when saying, like, if the doctor basically told him he was either going to do this and fight or hold his kid, I'm pretty sure he's going to choose the latter. So it seems like TJ Dillashaw is doing what he needs to do for his life, but it does seem like that was the last time we will see him inside of a cage. So,
man, quite the career for Mr. Dillashaw.
Yeah, it kind of sucks, but at the same time, like, after the whole cheating scandal, I'm kind of okay with him not coming back personally. But for my own sanity, I am choosing to believe that he was not juiced up for the Renan Barão fight, because that fight is, well, at least the first one. The first fight was one of the greatest things I think I've ever seen in my life.
Ever. Oh my God. One of my favorite fights ever.
So he's definitely brought some great memories, but kind of marred it at the end, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's
next on the list.
So poetic about him right now.
Yeah. Next on the list, a story that I was very surprised to hear about. It seems like we all were. Holland Paiva finds himself in the news. I don't think this was as mainstream MMA news because he wasn't in a mainstream organization like UFC or anything like that at the time. But in 2018, Holland Paiva and his girlfriend at the time were attacked, and his girlfriend was murdered. There was an attempt on his life as well, but his girlfriend at the time received obviously the worst of it. So one of the men involved in this situation was sentenced to 16 years recently in Brazil for the murder of his girlfriend, Taylor Alves, and for the attempted murder of Holland Paiva. Basically, the story is Alves, Paiva and his girlfriend were out at a club, and there was two men, one of which is the person now going away for 16 years. The other man is actually still on trial, and they're expected to finish that up in 2023. But basically, they tried to pick a fight with Holland Paiva. Paiva stopped his motorcycle by the car, and basically the drivers of this car ran him over and ran into the bike. The girlfriend went flying. It was kind of obviously a really bad scene. She died 6 days after the actual accident. And obviously these guys look like they're going away for a really long time. So the person who officially got the 16 years was not the driver. He was the passenger, which is why I'm assuming he didn't get as much. But the person who was driving the car, I'm assuming, is about to get hit with a serious amount of time. And as well he should. Fuck him. So that's that. Some updates on the James Krause situation. So a lot has transpired with the Derek Minner situation. For those of you who might remember a couple weeks ago, or I don't even know now, maybe a month ago, Derek Minner was involved in a fight where he lost very quickly as a result of an injury. As it turns out, the injury was a well-known injury by him and his camp. There seemed to be some sort of heckin' involving the betting lines as a result of this injury. These rumors now have circulated that James Krause knew about the injury and was telling people to bet against Derek Minner because of the known injury, and kind of spreading some inside information about things like that. As a result of all of this craziness and all of the investigations that have been going on, Ontario and Alberta, both provinces in Canada, have officially banned UFC betting. New Jersey has also stopped taking bets on any fights with any associations to James Krause. Currently, the UFC Chief of Business Officer Hunter Campbell has informed all fighters via email that effective immediately, fighters who choose to continue to be coached by James Krause or who continue to train at his gym will no longer be able to participate in UFC events. This will remain pending Nevada's investigation into the suspicious Derek Minner fight of 11/5, so it was a month ago. It was November 5th. Krause's license has now been officially suspended in Nevada, and the UFC has officially released Derek Minner. So there is a lot of moving parts right now. Obviously, this affects people like Brandon Moreno. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how this all develops. Brandon Moreno's got a fight coming up relatively soon. He seems to, on social media, be backing James Krause, but he might have to make a real business decision right now when it comes to fighting for this belt, because he's always been a family first kind of guy, and as close as he is with James Krause, that's not his family. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I haven't been able to keep up with this story as much as I would normally like to. I actually have some videos I sent to myself just to try to learn more about it, but it seems like James Krause is all the way fucked. Like, I think 100%. That his coaching career is not returning from this.
I think MMA, period. Anything involving MMA, like, he might have just blackballed himself from an entire sport.
Yeah.
Like, to do anything.
Yeah.
I'll also quickly read, I wasn't going to, but since you said that, I'm going to just quickly read something that Matt Brown said. Matt Brown does know James Krause. He's actually knows him on a personal level, has helped him with personal business decisions and things like that. But he basically said, sounds like he went to the well one too many times on this one. He reached a little too far, overstepped his boundaries, and now he's looking like Pete Ross out here. For those of you who don't know, you can Google Pete Ross, baseball. I have Pete Rose here. I can't fucking read. You can Google Pete Rose and baseball and go down that rabbit hole. Long story short, James Krause is fucked. Everything he's worked for is going down the drain from this. I've never seen anything like this. So definitely one of the bigger scandals in MMA at this point. And it sucks that it had to be a guy as talented and as highly skilled in the coaching area as James Krause.
Dude, I love James Krause.
I do too.
It sucks. Yeah.
It really does. It really does suck. Last on the list of news announcements, Michael Chiesa and Conor McGregor have officially settled their lawsuit involving the infamous bus incident of 2015, 16, 18. What fucking year was that, bro?
Who knows, dude?
2018. I think it was 2018. For those of you who are unaware, somehow, if you just got the internet, Conor McGregor, way back when, went to MSG
18
to confront Khabib after Khabib had kind of bitch slapped and sunned Artem. And yes, the same Artem who is now suing Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor flew over there to defend the honor of his man Artem and chucked a fucking metal dolly through a bus containing UFC fighters. Chiesa, Rose Namajunas, Khabib, Tuhugov. A number of UFC fighters were involved in this incident. A number of UFC fighters filed grievances. Chiesa, I think, was one of the more public ones. And it seems like he must have gotten a bag out of it. I'm sure he's rolling in some kind of dough after that settlement. So,
Yeah.
Good for him. McGregor pulled a real dick move that day. So, good for him.
Yep.
All right. Next on the list, we've got a few fight announcements, and then we can get to this upcoming week's card. Robbie Lawler is out, unfortunately, with his fight against Santiago Ponzinibbio this weekend at UFC 282. Short notice replacement in Alex Morono fighting Santiago Ponzinibbio. That is a big, big spot for Morono. A tall order for Morono as far as I'm concerned. But credit to him for stepping up, because that's a man fight right there. That is some serious strap your balls in for that one. So good on him. I should also mention that because it is short notice, it is now officially going to be a 180-pound catch weight, not 170 pounds. Just FYI. Michael Morales is out against his fight with Renat Fakhretdinov. He will now be facing Bryan Battle on a short notice replacement on December 17th. So Battle will have his next fight shortly. Albert Duraev.
Who's Battle fighting? Michael Morales?
No, Michael Morales is out. So Bryan Battle is
Got
replacing him. Yeah. Albert Duraev is out against his fight against is it Michael or Mikhail? Mikhail Olenchechek? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mikhail?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
like
believe.
a breathy H. Mikhail.
Okay. Mikhail Olenchechek will now be facing Cody Brundage at UFC Vegas 66 on December 17th as well. So just a couple of fight changes for that card. Cody Stamann versus Luan Luis Lacerda has been added to UFC's 283 card on January 21st. Jasmine Jasudavicius versus Courtney Casey has been added to UFC's February 25th event. And last but not least, not a UFC fight, but one that is probably more interesting than most of them. Demetrius Johnson versus Adrian Moraes 3 will be headlining one on Prime Video 10 on May 5th. So you got a lot of time to get your ducks in order for that one. And that's all we got.
Oh, baby. All right. Let us now look ahead. It is 3 in the morning.
It is
It's
not.
not quite that late, but it feels like it. Okay. Bellator 289 preview going down this weekend, December 9th, at the Mohegan Sun Arena in Connecticut. Here we go. Which fights are we talking about? Okay. Yes. The semifinals of the $1 million Bellator Bantamweight World Grand Prix are scheduled for this event, as well as the title bout rematch between Bellator Women's Flyweight World Champion Liz Carmouche against Julianna Velasquez. Let us first talk about the co-main event, part of that Bantamweight World Grand Prix between Magomedov and Patchy Mix. So Magomed Tiger Magomedov out of Moscow, Russia, 30 years old, 19-2 as a pro, coming off of a win against, I believe it was a wild card fight, Enrique Barzola, taking on Patchy Mix, riding a 3-fight win streak over Albert Morales, James Gallagher, and Kyoji Horiguchi. Patchy Mix, 29 years old, out of Angola, New York, 16-1 as a pro. His only losses to Juan Archuleta back in 2020. Mark, why don't you go first? Give us your take on Patchy Mix versus Magomed.
So this is a big card with 3 big fights that has zero buzz because I don't know what the fuck Bellator is doing over there. But like you just said it, Patchy Mix is 16-1. He just beat Kyoji Horiguchi. Magomedov had his rivalry with Jan. He's been great. You got the rematch with Carmouche and Velasquez. Stots and Sabatello feels like it should be a huge deal. I don't know what. I feel like I haven't heard a peep about this event. And it's the semifinals of the tournament. I don't know. I'm not thrilled with whatever Bellator's marketing department is up to over there. But these are 3 good fights, and I love this fight. Magomedov is a small favorite. He's -140. Patchy Mix is +110. Of course, there are size advantages for Patchy Mix. There always are. He's 4 inches taller, and he will have a 2.5-inch reach advantage. So he's certainly the bigger man. For some reason, as much as I know Patchy Mix is a stud, I have a hard time believing that he is like elite level. Like, I didn't think he'd beat Kyoji, and he trounced him. So I don't know. Like, the man is 16-1, but for some reason I can't get like fully on board even after the Kyoji fight. And I'm having a hard time picking him over Magomedov here. Like, as big as Mix is, I still tend to think that Magomed is going to have either the wrestling edge or just enough of a wrestling competitiveness that Mix can't work his game successfully. I think Magomed is the better striker as well. I certainly think that. So I don't know how it could go Mix's way if I'm right about those two things. Like, of course it could happen. Mix is so long and he appears so big in there in the grappling exchanges, and he can grapple his ass off, so he can always find something. But I'm just going to trust the overall skill level of Magomedov to get this done. I do think it will be close. I could even see it being like a split decision, but I just think Magomedov's wrestling is enough. I think he can scramble enough. He's a great scrambler, and I think he's going to be the one with the more impactful strikes. So I will say 48-47 decision for Magomedov.
Omar, give it to us.
I would kind of have to agree. I would add that Magomedov, I think if Patchy Mix was more of a takedown threat, I would be more inclined potentially to choose him over Magomedov. Magomedov has shown vulnerabilities to the takedown even at the highest level, right? Like Rafael and Stots was able to take him down a couple times. But Mix isn't that guy. And I do think he's going to have moments where there might be some opportunity for submission attempts. But I do think Magomed is going to be skilled enough to be able to stop those and possibly even skilled enough to neutralize a lot of Patchy Mix's weapons on the ground. So I'm going to go with Magomed as well. I'm going to go with 4-1 unanimous decision.
I think this fight really can be a grappler's delight here because both guys are sort of submission threats in a big way. You have Magomedov, out of his 19 wins, almost half of them have come by way of submission. And Mix, of his 16 wins, almost 70% of those have come by way of submission. So I would love to see this fight play out on the ground and see who wins that chess match. And I'm going to take Patchy Mix this time to get it done over the Russian, I'm going to say, submission coming in round number 3.
Like it.
Yes, sir. Grappler's delight. By the way, neither guy has ever been subbed. Neither guy's ever been finished at all.
Makes sense. What, do they have 3 losses between them?
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about this women's matchup. Liz Carmouche, Julianna Velasquez 2. It is the rematch. So we have title bout rematch for the Bellator Women's Flyweight World Championship. Carmouche, let's not forget, won the title back in April. But it was a TKO victory that was sort of considered controversial by a few. And Velasquez's team appealed the results on the grounds of the refereeing error made by Mike Beltran. But the appeal, of course, was denied by the Hawaii State Boxing Commission. Appeals like that never get
Rare bear.
through. Omar, give us your take of Carmouche and Velasquez too.
It's a very interesting rematch because if I remember right, and Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, because this was months ago now at this point, but I believe Liz Carmouche wasn't winning that fight up until that point. It was a close fight, but I feel like she was getting edged out by Velasquez up until that point. Then
you could have given her round 1, but she definitely lost rounds 2 and 3, and then 4 is when she pulled it out.
Right, and the stoppage, I remember there being a lot of talk about it being an early stoppage. I feel like most of us did not believe it was necessarily early, especially because there was no real fight back from Velasquez because of the position that she was in. And you would have basically just been saying, just hit me until I go unconscious, which is not always going to be the case. So I understand where Velasquez was coming from, but I just didn't think there was any merit in her saying that finish wasn't legit. Either way, the problems I think still present themselves the very same way as the first fight. Liz Carmouche fights how Liz Carmouche fights. That woman is set in her ways, I think, at this point. And she's good at what she does. She is a very good grappler. She's got heavy hands. But her wrestling and her jiu-jitsu, I think, is where she likes to really lean in her performances. And Velasquez, I think, is similar in that regard. And I think it's really about who you trust down on the ground. And personally, I know how that first fight went, and I'm still going with Julianna Velasquez to win. I think it was her fight to win at that point, and she just got messed up in a bad position, and I don't think she'll end up in again. So I'm going to go with Julianna Velasquez by unanimous decision.
Marcus.
All right. The defending champ, Liz Carmouche, is the dog. She is plus 145. Julianna Velasquez is minus 180. I am tempted to pick Liz Carmouche again. It felt very good to pick her the first time and get the comments of how she can never finish Julianna, and then she did just that. So I always will enjoy that. But, yeah, Liz is a wildly underrated fighter. Like, she is still a top-level women's flyweight in the world. She has a hell of a resume. She's beaten Jessica Andrade, Katlyn Chookagian. I mean, they were a little while ago, but no one's really beating her other than Valentina beat her. So she's a stud. Obviously, she's getting older. But, yeah, I agree she earned this belt. I thought it was a legit stoppage. First fight really was very close. If there wasn't a stoppage there, I think it would have been 2-2 at that point. I did give Liz the first. Julianna had done well in the striking in rounds 2 and 3. Of course, her judo is always a weapon, but I said it before that fight, and I still think it, that Liz Carmouche is just a really tough matchup for that judo game. She's a tough matchup for a lot of people's games. Unless you're like a long striker, which Julianna can be at times, it's kind of hard to make your game work on Liz Carmouche. She's so strong. She's so scrappy. She has a really good base, really good balance. She's hard to control. It's not easy to beat Liz Carmouche in there. And I could see Liz getting Julianna down again the way she did in the last fight. So I really think this is a toss-up. I've gone back and forth thinking about it. I could see myself changing my mind again between now and Friday, but it just kind of feels to my brain like this is something that's going to drag out into a trilogy. So I will say that more of this fight looks more like those rounds 2 and 3, and the striking carries Velasquez to a 48-47 UD.
Yeah, I'm taking Velasquez in this rematch here. I think she's too talented not to get one over Carmouche, and I would love for it to set up a trilogy. I'm going to say she gets the unanimous decision here. In a competitive fight, though, perfectly setting up for that third fight. So I'm going to say Velasquez wrests the title back from Carmouche. Okay, the main event, Raufeon Stots versus Danny Sabatello, the other matchup in that Bellator Bantamweight World Grand Prix. Raufeon Stots, Supa, the 33-year-old out of Houston, Texas, is 18-1. That one loss came at the hands of one Mr. Merab Dvalishvili in the local circuit in New York at a promotion called Ring of Combat. This was back in 2017. He has been undefeated since. He was undefeated, obviously, up until that point, and has been undefeated since, most recently defeating Juan Archuleta as part of the Grand Prix. Okay, Danny Sabatello, the Italian gangster out of Coconut Creek, Florida. 29 years old. He is 13-1. His only one loss came at the hands of Erwin Rivera, also in a local circuit show called Titan FC, kind of a bigger regional one. Also undefeated since that, most recently defeating Leandro Higo by decision back in June. Omar, give us your take and your pick, quickly, of Sabatello and Stots.
It's a really interesting fight because this is obviously going to be a real test for Sabatello. He's been through the last couple fights, I think, have kind of really set the tone for what we should be expecting from Sabatello. But Raufeon Stots is a tall order, I think, for anybody. The one thing I will say is the lead up to this fight and all the build up and all the stuff that they've been talking. Raufeon Stots really got me sold on the fact that Danny Sabatello is extremely overrated, and that Sabatello has just found a way to sell himself in the right way to make it seem like he's better than he really is. And And I say that he's selling me on it because the more I think about it, the more I'm having a hard time defending that point, or defending Sabatello from that point, I should say. And it's not that Sabatello's not talented, but his performances leave something to be desired in the terms of a great or somebody on a Rafael Stots level, or somebody at the very, very top in the elite. There is something that just seems like it's missing. A little salt that needs to be added, if you will, some more seasoning to the pot. With all that being said and done, I think Raufeon Stots is he's the plate that's just made just right. And I think he's going to be able to take it home. I think he is more skilled on the ground. I think a lot of the shots that Sabatello is going to go for are not going to work on Raufeon. And I think Raufeon is going to be able to work to send up Sabatello to the ground and from the ground. So I'm going to go with Raufeon Stots. I do think it's going to be competitive. So I will say 48-47 Stots.
Okay, Mark.
All right, Stots is the favorite. He's minus 150. Danny Sabatello is plus 125, so pretty close. Danny's 3 inches taller here, but Stots has a 3-inch reach advantage, so that's interesting. I kind of made this point, but I'll make it again quick. I thought this particular fight was going to have a lot more buzz on it in the MMA world, especially with the way both of these guys are willing to talk shit, and they have been talking shit. Mm-hmm. I feel like Bellator has kind of dropped the ball marketing this thing, but this is a big deal and a big fight. Both men have one loss in their entire career. I know Stots' was a little bit kind of fluky, not fluky, but just like a flash knockout. And if I recall, I kind of think Sabatello's was the same in a fight that he was winning, but don't quote me on that one.
No, it was a body shot that just put him out.
There you go. So yeah, they are both on huge streaks right now. Obviously, one man's momentum is going to come to an end. They've been running through everyone that they've stood across from lately. But yeah, really what this fight comes down to is, do you think Danny Sabatello can take Raufeon Stots down often enough in at least 3 of these rounds? That's the whole question of this fight, more or less. And we know that he's shown that he's able to do that to anyone thus far, but Raufeon Stots is a hell of a wrestler and a hell of an athlete on top of that. The way he can scramble, he's very hard to control, slippery guy, fast guy, strong guy. He's everything you could want physically in the 135-pound division. And on the feet, I think this thing is all Stots as well. Not like he's some elite level striker, but he's a dangerous striker, and Danny Sabatello is not that. So it's just a matter of, will Stots be able to truly open up on the feet, or will he be too concerned about the takedown that part of his game is taken away a little bit? Like, I guess that wouldn't be shocking, but I just think he can still do enough to win striking exchanges, and I'm sure he'll be on his back a couple times, but I think he can do enough there too. Like I said, I could see it go the other way, but Stots defended wrestling really well against Magomedov, like super impressively. Granted, Sabatello's a different style that may be a little tougher for Stots to counter, but I'm going to trust that he can do kind of the same thing and get at least 3 of these rounds. So I will say Raufeon Stots, 48-47 UD.
Okay. I like it, and I agree. I think that, to echo you, Mark, I like the athleticism of Stots over Sabatello. I think he's going to be way more explosive and a much more dangerous striker. I think that he's going to hand Sabatello his second knockout or TKO loss. I think he's going to get the better of him. He's going to find himself on top, and I think he's going to be a club and sub, perhaps. I'm going to take submission victory for Stots. I'm going to say round number 3. Okay.
That'd be fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Very nice.
UFC 282 preview. Here we go. Kind of a funny funny pay-per-view, if you ask me. So this weekend, December 10th.
Why is it funny?
The main event.
Oh,
Being
okay.
a vacant title.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. December 10th, Saturday, T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. We have UFC 282, Blachowicz versus Ankalaev. Here we go. Let us begin first down in the prelims. But before we get into that, any other fights or fighters that you guys want to spotlight real quick?
I'll say quickly, there are a few debutantes that are worth keeping an eye on that we're not. We had to cut some fights out here. We've already covered a million things in this episode, and there's some stacked fights. But the opening fight, Cameron Saman, I believe is how you say his name, and Steven Costello are both credentialed prospects who are names to keep an eye on. Whoever wins this fight may be someone interesting. And then I think Omar's going to mention one of the other guys, so I'll skip him. But also Eric Silva, who is not necessarily a young, the prospect doesn't fit him, but he's a quality fighter who is getting his UFC chance now, and who has some filthy jits. So he's someone to keep an eye on as well. He's matched up with T.J. Brown on this card.
Okay.
I didn't have anybody. We're not. Are we not doing him? Oh damn! No, I missed it. No, yeah, we're not doing him. So yeah, Raul Rosas Jr. Is on. I could have swore we were going to cover him, but I just noticed in the show notes we don't have him. But Raul Rosas Jr. is on this card, so he's the youngest UFC athlete on the roster, I think, to ever have been on the roster. I think the kid just turned 18 when he made it to the roster. The kid's nasty though, man. His fight against in the Contender Series, which I would imagine probably had a lot of stress and a lot of nerves behind it, was a pretty damn fantastic performance. So I can only imagine what a big spot this is for him, especially on a pay-per-view right off the bat, fighting a guy like Jay Perrin. And he's not, I mean, he's either the headliner of the prelims or right at the beginning of the main card. I can't really tell. But boy, it's a big spot for this kid, a big moment for him to shine. So definitely keep an eye out for Raul Rosas Jr.
All right. Starting us off first, Billy Quarantillo versus Alexander the Great Ape Hernandez.
The Great Ape? When did he become the Great Ape? He used to just be the Great, right?
Yeah, no.
I think he added ape. Yeah, interesting. Okay.
Okay, Billy Q, 33-year-old out of Tampa, Florida, coming off a loss against Shane Burgos. Hernandez also coming off a loss against Renato Moicano. Give us your take, Mark.
This is a tough one for me. So the odds, Billy Q is favored. He's minus 165. Alexander Hernandez is plus 135. So first off, Hernandez is a thick fucking guy to be cutting down to 145. I was surprised to see that. So we'll see how that weight cut goes. But he's a guy that has shown before that he can hang with high-level guys and beat high-level guys. Whereas Billy Q, while clearly talented, hasn't really shown us he can get that big win as of yet. So that's kind of an interesting contrast. And, I'm having a hard time picking it. Hernandez is not going to carry any huge size advantage or anything as he moves down. He's going to have 2 inches of reach, but not anything so noteworthy. He's even an inch shorter than Billy Q. So they're basically the same size here. And Hernandez has beaten legit dudes. Like, he beat Trinaldo. He beat Dariush, of course, famously in his debut. He beat OAM, which means something. So he's the one with the resume here, and I feel like he's who I should be picking, but for some reason I'm going the other way. And I guess Quarantillo's favorite, so I guess I'm not the only one with this thought process. I don't know if I love the weight cut. Billy Q feels like a guy who kind of has been waiting to break through a little bit. He did have a great scrap with Burgos. Granted, he lost. I kind of could see this being his moment here. I could see maybe he loses the first, but as the fight goes on, the cardio of Hernandez comes into play. Quarantillo's pace comes into play, and he pulls this thing out. So I will say he takes the last 2 rounds and takes a UD for himself.
Omar, go.
I actually agree with that point, especially about the cardio and the trajectory of the fight. I just don't think it'll last all 3 rounds. I think the eventual cardio from Quarantillo is probably going to melt Hernandez by the end of it. So I'm going to go Quarantillo by TKO round 3.
I like the talent and the power of Alexander Hernandez. I have since he got into the UFC, so I'm going to take him by TKO in round number 1.
Wow.
It'll be interesting to see what the man looks like, though, during weigh-ins, because, like Mark said, we haven't seen him at 145, and the kid doesn't really have fat. It's not like when we've seen him weigh in at 155 that there's any kind of fucking body fat on him, really. So I don't know what he's cutting.
Okay, big one. Fun one here. In the middleweight division, Chris, the Action Man Curtis, taking on Joaquin Numansa Buckley. Curtis, the 35-year-old out of Ohio, 29-9 as a pro, 16 knockouts. Goddamn. Coming off of a loss, a unanimous decision loss against Jack Hermansson back in July. Buckley, the 28-year-old from Missouri, 15-5 as a pro, 11 knockouts, also coming off of a loss against Imavov. So both men looking to get back into the win column. Mark, go first.
It's another really good fight. There's a lot of
Great fight.
quietly solid fights throughout this card. So first off, I thought that if I was considering Buckley here, I'd be considering taking the dog, and that's incorrect. He is minus 155 to beat Chris Curtis. Chris Curtis is plus 130. Didn't see those odds coming. But I kind of feel like this might be the one. Like this might be the right matchup where Joaquin Buckley finally breaks through. And you can tell the UFC wants him to. They keep giving him these chances. Like he kind of got this big jump to Imavov. He lost it, and they were like, well, you're staying right here and fighting Chris Curtis. So, I mean, we know the skill is there. Chris Curtis is no easy task. I've picked against Chris Curtis a lot, as you may remember, and I reached a point where I had to say on the show that even if he fought Ngannou, I was locked into picking him in his next fight because I kept picking against him and he kept winning. He's going to come in there to scrap with Buckley, but to me, Buckley has the better movement. He's equally as much of a finishing threat, if not more. And there's no reach advantage for Curtis, which has been an issue for Buckley in his losses, like his loss to Holland, his loss to Imavov. The reach advantage played a big factor, and he wasn't able to work his same game. These guys are the same size. So it's a coin toss, and I don't know if Buckley is ready to break through, but I really have loved how he looked lately. I loved the way he looked against Zurayev. I thought that was the best version of him we've ever seen. Imavov put it on him, but Imavov is a stud, and Buckley, the way he bounced back in round 3 of that fight, really encouraged me. Imavov had to kind of survive that round 3. So I like what I'm seeing out of Buckley right now, and I will say he wins this fight by UD.
Okay. Omar, give it to us.
I would agree with all those takes, to be really honest. The one thing I would add is the contrast to Joaquin Buckley's recent performances and how good he's looked even through his losses. And I would counter that with how lackluster Curtis looked in specifically his last loss against Jack Hermansson. Definitely left something to be desired. The way he fought Jack Hermansson was just not it. And I can tell you right now, if he fights that same fight against Buckley, he's going to get a heel right to his jaw. Buckley is not the one to fuck around with at all. The athleticism from that kid and his creativity make him a real threat. And I think the only thing that messes him up sometimes is almost being too creative at times and leaving himself exposed to opportunities to get messed up. And people have caught him. So definitely touchable, but Joaquin Buckley, man, is a really good fighter. And Curtis has the tools to beat Buckley, but I think Buckley is just going to be one step ahead of him. I'm going to go with Buckley by unanimous decision. I think he gets all 3 rounds.
Mark, I love your point about the reach and about how Buckley has had a difficulty with the reach, and that's a direct reflection on his recent losses. So I agree. I think that if it's going to be a stand-up war, it's going to be Buckley who comes out victorious. I'm going to say that he's going to hand Chris Curtis his second TKO loss, and I'm going to say he's going to get him out of there in the second round. Okay, moving on. Sticking with the middleweights here, Edmund Shabazian taking on Dacha Lungiambula. There you go.
Yeah.
Both men looking to get back into the win column after 3 straight losses. Shabazian, the at one point up-and-comer, like I said, having dropped 3 in a row to Brunson, Hermansson, and Imavov. So 3 very talented middleweights. Shabazian, the 25-year-old out of L.A., California. Lungiambula out of Cape Town, South Africa. He is 35 years old, so a 10-year age difference here. So, Omar, give us your take and your quick pick.
So I was recently reading an interview with Shabazian about his recent changes since he's no longer with Glendale Fighting Club. There was a lot of drama apparently with the team. correct me if I'm wrong, the Glendale Fighting Club is the old Ronda Rousey team with Edmund and the head movement and all that stuff. So it sounds like Shahbazian is kind of over that team. Whatever drama went down there really left a bad taste in his mouth. It kind of cited very, politically there were differences with the coaches and not seeing eye to eye with a lot of things. So long story short, he basically dipped out of Glendale, and I believe now he's with Extreme Couture and has been training with those guys for a little bit. So I'm interested to see if this makes any difference in his actual performances, any difference in the way he approaches the fights, because there was a time where Shahbazian was potentially one of the great prospects of that time when he first came into the scene, and he just hasn't really lived up to the hype. Basically, since the pandemic, he hasn't won a fight. So it'll be interesting to see how he comes back. Lugiambula is a tall order to come back from. That man is a scary, scary individual. He has lost 3 in a row, but he has been able to touch a couple of these guys on the way out. And he's definitely a KO threat. Like he definitely is not somebody you want to stand directly in front of when he's throwing some punches. So if Edmund can get his head movement right, pun slightly intended, Lugiambula might have a real tough time that night. But I do think Shahbazian is the more talented fighter. It's whether he's going to be able to put it all together that night. So I will go with Shahbazian by unanimous decision.
So Edmund's a big favorite. He's minus 300. Dalsha is plus 240. I get that. I think that the UFC went pretty safe here to try to get Shahbazian a win. The man who knocked out Brad Tavares should absolutely not lose to Dalsha Lungiambula. And if he does, the whole Edmund Shahbazian thing may be over as soon as it began. Not to say Lungiambula is a bum, because as Omar said, he's not. He's a powerful, dangerous man. But he has not done anything to show that he's on a level that Edmund Shahbazian is perceived to be on. Supposedly, Edmund spent his whole camp training with Magomed Ankalaev as well, which can only help. I got to assume that was a tough and focused camp. I will trust him to get back on the winning side of the ledger. He's at a 2-inch reach disadvantage, but he's 6 inches taller. And I think that'll be a factor for him with his kicks. I think he could look to grapple, which has shown to be a flaw in Dalcha's game before. And I will say Shahbazian gets this done on the ground. I could see it either way. I could even see like a spaced out club and sub scenario. Like he hurts him with something, but Dalcha's in it and he kind of like follows them and they eventually get to the mat and then a sub happens like a bit later. Something like that. So I'll say round 2 sub.
I think this is Shahbazian's last hurrah. If he loses, then it's like I'm hopping off the Shahbazian train permanently. That being said, I'm going to pick him to get the win here. I think he's going to outshine Lungiambula on the feet, and he's going to TKO him. I'm going to say he's going to TKO him in round number 2. Maybe 3. No, I'm going to say stick with 2. Okay. A heavyweight bout between Jairzinho Rozenstruik and Chris Daukaus was originally scheduled for UFC Fight Night Dern versus Jan, but for some reason, for unknown reasons, it was moved to this pay-per-view. So here we go. Heavyweights. Jairzinho Biggie Boy Rozenstruik out of Suriname, coming off of back-to-back losses against Curtis Blades and Alexander Volkov. He's 12-4 as a pro with 11 knockouts. Daukaus from Philly, 12-5 as a pro with 11 knockouts. Also coming off of back-to-back losses at the hands of Derek Lewis and also Curtis Blades. Omar, why don't you take this one first? Give us your take and your quick pick.
So this fight, I kind of hate for Chris Daukaus, to be honest. I'm not a huge Chris Daukaus fan. I'm not generally standing for him, but I'm also not the type of person to encourage someone to their death. So this seems like that's kind of what we're trying to do to Chris Daukaus here. He's dropped a couple in his last fights. Jairzinho has been less than consistent, but Chris Daukaus is the type of person who, from his most recent fights, seems to have a problem not being a heavy bag for people. And if you're doing that against Jairzinho Rozenstruik, you are bound to get launched to the other side of the octagon. Unless Chris Daukaus has done something significant to change the vulnerability that he seems to have in getting hit in the face, Jairzinho Rozenstruik is going to lay this kid the fuck out. So I'm going to go with Rozenstruik, round 1, KO.
Mark.
Okay, so Rozenstruik is favored. He's minus 175. Chris Daukaus is plus 145. So
That's close.
Yeah, it's closer than I thought it would be, to be honest. And I agree with you. This is kind of another one of these examples. Like, you just had Daukaus get smoked by Derek Lewis, then he gets knocked out by Curtis Blades. Like, if you want him to be anything, why not go a little down the ladder and see if he gets a win? Like, you're just asking for him to get knocked out 3 consecutive fights, which kind of kills anything that is Chris Daukaus. And that's what I think is going to happen. I mean, the guy has shown some skills with his hands, but he just doesn't strike me as a guy who should be fighting top heavyweights. I don't know what it is. He always feels small to me in there. I don't know if it's because he's like kind of overweight and his actual frame is not as big as these other guys' frames.
Agree.
But I just don't see him succeeding too much in hitting Rozenstruik and not being hit. Rozenstruik is a really high-level heavyweight kickboxer, and I don't trust Daukaus' chin to hold up when a big shot lands. I don't trust him to get Rozenstruik out of there before that happens, and I will say Daukaus gets put down again. So I'll go Rozenstruik round 2 knockout.
Completely agree. Rozenstruik is going to touch him. It's going to be a round 1 knockout. Sorry, Daukaus. Love you, buddy. Go Eagles. Psych. Let's move on. We have quite a few more fights to go, and I'm dying. Okay, featherweight action. This one is going to be fucking nuts. Bryce Thug Nasty Mitchell taking on Ilia El Matador Topuria. Bryce Mitchell, out of Arkansas, 28 years old, undefeated, 15-0. Out of his 15 victories, 9 submissions. No knockouts, but 9 submissions. Coming off of a unanimous decision over Edson Barboza. Topuria, on the other side, also undefeated. One of those rare times in the sport where we get to say someone's O has got to go. Topuria, the 25-year-old, fighting out of Spain. Of his 12 victories, 4 knockouts, 7 submissions, totaling about a 90% finish rate, gentlemen. Only 1 fight has gone to the distance. Most recently, taking Jai Herbert's soul in the second round of that fight. Mark, let's start with you, bud. Give us your take on how
I was really hoping it didn't start with me, so I could see if
lose the O.
I wanted to see if Omar said anything smart that made me able to make a decision here. I would like to opt out of picking this fight. They're both so good, and I love both of their games. I think they're super interesting contenders in this division. The odds are tight. Topuria is actually the favorite. He is minus 145. Bryce Mitchell is plus 115. Bryce Mitchell is so damn good at what he does. But Ilia Topuria is an absolute freak. The scrambling ability that he has, the strength and the power, and the actual grappling skill along with it. Like, he is a very skilled grappler in his own right. Plus, the KO power is on his side. Like, you add all that up, it kind of feels like a recipe of how to beat Bryce Mitchell. So, I love Bryce. If this was 5 rounds, first of all, I fucking wish this was 5 rounds. I think I'd consider Bryce more because I think the cardio and the relentlessness would come into play a bit more. They're similar size. Bryce is 3 inches taller, but the reach is the same. It's hard. I mean, it's 2 undefeated fighters, which is always amazing because you're kind of yet to learn what the recipe is to beat either guy. But I just can't shake the feeling that Topuria kind of has it. He has kind of the exact skill set you need to beat Bryce Mitchell. Now, first off, we got to see how the weight cut goes. Topuria moved up to lightweight because he was struggling so much to cut to featherweight. Now he is suddenly back, so we'll see how the weight cut goes. But assuming it goes well, as great as Bryce Mitchell has looked, I'm just pulling up his record right now so I quote this correctly. This is the toughest matchup he's had stylistically by a country mile. Like, he, in the UFC, he beat Tyler Diamond, Bobby Moffitt, Matt Sales, Charles Rosa. We'll skip all 4 of those guys. Of course he beat those guys. Topuria would annihilate those guys too. Then he beat Andre Feely, who, like, yeah, he can grapple and he's a little scrambly, but he's not any powerful kind of guy who can defend the wrestling. And then he beat Edson Barbosa, who obviously is super dangerous on the feet, but he can be a sitting duck at times for the wrestling also. So I don't think we've seen Bryce's game work against someone like an Ilia Topuria. And as much as I love Bryce, I think this is a really difficult matchup. And I will say Topuria wins it 29-28 UD.
Omar.
Yeah, I got to say, this one's not really that difficult for me. I have no problems picking this fight. I think Ilia Topuria is the significantly better fighter of the two. I say that for a couple different reasons. I think what Bryce Mitchell brings to the table, the 2 biggest attributes he brings to the table, is his chain wrestling and his cardio. I think when you put both of those together, it's a real recipe for people not being able to get or keep Bryce Mitchell off of them. And then he does what he does on the ground, rolls around, eventually more than likely ends up getting some kind of either decision or submission based on control and based on his heavy grappling. His striking is not particularly amazing, but just like Colby Covington and a lot of other guys who are very good chain wrestlers, very good with the cardio, like significantly good with the cardio, the striking becomes a tool to use in combination with the grappling. When you put all that together, Bryce Mitchell becomes a real pain in the ass to deal with because he's coming at you consistently and from all levels. Ilia Topuria is the kind of guy that I think does a lot of the same thing and is better at it. Not to mention, if you take them skill for skill, and let's say that they're even, let's say that they are complementary to one another, as far as their level is concerned, and they're able to their ability to execute their game plans. At that point, then I'm just looking to see who the hell is stronger, who is physically more capable of getting those things off on each other. And it just seems like Ilia Topuria is going to take that cake too. So there's a lot of things that are working against Bryce Mitchell. I have a very hard time seeing a real path to victory for Bryce Mitchell that doesn't involve catching Ilia Topuria in something opportunistic or taking some kind of crazy ass beating in the meantime. So I'm going to go with Ilia Topuria. I'll give Bryce Mitchell the benefit of the doubt that he won't allow himself to get finished, but I think Bryce Mitchell gets beat on for 3 rounds. So I'm going to go with Ilia Topuria, unanimous decision, 30-27.
And we are unanimous because
Wow.
I am also taking Topuria. I think, to Mark's point, Topuria has a great skill set to defeat Bryce Mitchell. Not only that, I'm going to make a boldish pick, and I'm going to say that he hands Bryce Mitchell not only his first loss, but his first knockout loss. And I just have a feeling that the first round is not going to go as Bryce Mitchell hopes it was going to go, and Topuria is going to defend a lot of takedowns pretty well. Maybe Mitchell will grapple for his life and get him down halfway through the first. But then I think in the second round, I just have a feeling Topuria is going to light him up. And I'm going to say he's going to knock him out in the second round.
The underestimation of Bryce Mitchell is kind of making me wish I picked Bryce Mitchell. I really do rate his game. But yeah, I certainly think he's going to lose round 1. If he wins this fight, it's somehow dragging him down in the second and then kind of saps his energy and wins the third too, something like that. But yeah, Topuria's fucking good, man. And now this is his time. He's kind of been waiting for a fight like this where he can actually announce himself. And this may be the one.
from a technique perspective, Bryce Mitchell reminds me a lot of Colby Covington. There's a lot of similarities in their game and their approach. And in a lot of instances, I'd be picking Colby Covington, to win a lot of fights just the same way, to be honest, I'd be picking Bryce Mitchell to win a lot of those fights as well. But when you got a guy that's game is very similar and his physical attributes are just more impressive, i.e. a Kamaru Usman, your man's is going to pick the physically more imposing human being with the similar skill set every time.
Fair.
Okay, we have 4 more fights.
We're getting there.
Okay. Going
My
back
body's
into the
starting
middle.
to hurt due to lack of
It's starting
sleep.
to hurt real bad. Let's quick pick these fucking dudes.
Yeah, right.
Darren Till versus Dricus Du Plessis. Till's from England, Du Plessis from South Africa. Mark, go make it big.
Oh, wow. Mike is giving up. Come on.
I'm dying. I have an event tomorrow.
We're here already, man. We got to finish this thing for the people. Dricus minus 190 as the favorite. Darren Till plus 160. I am going to do it again. One more time. The very last time that I trust Darren Till.
No.
Once
Fuck
again.
it. We're going to go to the loony bin together. It's all good. We'll go to the loony bin together.
The matchup that is in front of Darren Till on paper should be a matchup that he wins. Dricus is very good. He's very good. I like Dricus a lot. He has a win over Roberto Soldic, who we were talking about earlier.
That's
But
right.
the way
I noted that too.
the way that he strikes, he should not be able to beat Darren Till. Like, he just shouldn't. He brawls, he crashes in, he wings punches at times, he kind of short arms punches at times. He's a bit sloppy, and even his grappling, which is also effective, is also a bit sloppy. Like, he's very much a bulldozer. That's kind of his style. He just keeps coming at you. You can't keep him off you, and then even if he's eating punches to his face, all of a sudden he starts landing them on your face, and the fight kind of changes, or he takes you down or whatever. But a guy with a style like that should not beat someone with the technique of Darren fucking Till. So the issue is that Dricus is tough as hell. So if Till's going to win this fight, I think he's got to do it for all 15 minutes. Because I don't think he's going to finish him. I mean, I guess he could if he catches him clean, but Dricus just eats shots like a fucking animal. So I think Till would have to win it on the cards, which is a lot of time for Dricus to possibly get him down, and we all know what can happen to Darren Till if he gets down. But I'm going to say he can do it. I'm going to say Darren Till, UD, the technique shines. Maybe it shines so much that he does even catch him, which would be huge. So I'll go Darren Till, UD. So with that said, expect him to get ragdolled in super disappointing fashion.
Homer.
So I am also going to go with the non-logical pick in Darren Till. My reasoning is a bit more. My reasoning is a bit more optimistic, I guess. Really, the man has been fighting and training with the Swedish team and with Hamzat. If your ass is not picking anything up from those savages that you can't beat Dricus Du Plessis, then I don't need to be picking you no more because you're just a phony, just a phony. So I would hope that all the work that he's been putting in there, all the ass beatings that we've seen him be taking in that gym, all the rounds of wrestling and cardio and weightlifting, all of the work, all the injuries that he's still putting his ass through training. I would hope that there were gains involved and not just pure pain and utter work for no result. So I have to believe in Darren Till. I have to believe that there was some sort of plus in him in the last year. I'm going to go Darren Till by unanimous decision. It's very possible Du Plessis knocks him the fuck out, though.
Yeah, I'm going with Du Plessis here. I feel like Till has just he's not the juggernaut he was at welterweight. I don't think he has looked great since he has entered the middleweight fray. He beat Gaslam, which is a nice name, but it was a split.
So he barely
That was a
beat
competitive
Gaslam.
fight. And even his last 2 fights at welterweight didn't go his way. You know, he got beat up bad by Woodley, and he got knocked the fuck out by Masvidal at one. And that was at 170 as well.
That was Woodley's last win, right? Like during his
that
slide that he had.
Woodley looked really good against Till.
That's accurate.
Which is what was concerning because he looked like shit against everyone else, but he looked nasty against Till. And so it's sort of like, so who was really looking like what in that fight?
There's a bit of irony with the nicknames of this fight because Till obviously is the gorilla, but I think of Duplessis more as the gorilla. Mark, what did you call him? Like the pile driver or the plow?
I said a bulldozer.
Bulldozer. That's a great nickname for him too. I
will say Duplessis' nickname also I feel like works better for Darren. Still knocks. Darren still knocks too.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Just works better.
I think he's going to beat Till up for 3 rounds to a clear unanimous decision, and that's the pick. Let's move on because I'm dying inside. In the welterweight division, a bout between the former UFC welterweight champion Robbie Lawler and Santiago Ponzinibbio was expected to take place at this event. The pairing was previously scheduled to meet at UFC 245 back in 2019, but Pons withdrew due to a staph infection. Let's see. And then this week, this bout almost fell through. Lawler had to withdraw due to, this time, an undisclosed injury. And Alex Morono, the Great White, stepped in at a catch weight of 180 pounds. So Morono, 32-year-old out of Houston, Texas, 22-7, won no contest, riding a 4-fight win streak coming into this fight. Ponzinibbio, the Argentine dagger, 36 years old, 28-6 as a pro with 15 knockouts, 6 subs, only 7 fights going the distance in which he won. He is looking to get back into the win column with back-to-back losses coming into this weekend against Jeff Neal and Michel Pereira. Omar, first of all, what was so funny?
I'm trying to figure out if Alex Morono really thought his nickname through, because ending his nickname the Great White doesn't really have the same ring as I think he thinks it does, right? The Great White Shark, something, the Great White something, but the Great White.
I think it's his name because he's so pale. Like I think someone gave him the name at one point.
I think it's the play on words
related to that. Yeah,
the Great White. Yeah, doesn't roll off the tongue.
Like,
as sexy as the Argentine dagger. I mean, that's
how Argentinian people sound, because I don't think it is.
I don't think it is either. It's not. That's not it at all. But that is a fantastic nickname. I mean, that's quality. That's primo right there. Okay, Alex Morono is in a big spot right here. This is a huge fight for Alex Morono. Obviously, he's taking it on very short notice. I think it's like a week, maybe even less at this point. I don't remember exactly when Lawler pulled out. It might have been yesterday. Was it yesterday?
I feel like it was.
So it's a big spot for him, man. And Ponzinibbio, if we're being really honest, has everything to lose at this point. Ponzinibbio has not been doing great lately. He's dropped his last 2 very tough fights that he's been in, but he has not gotten the nod, and he has looked not quite like himself, like the earlier versions of Pons that we have been used to seeing dominate. The fights have been a lot more competitive and even more so less dominant, a lot less dominant from the Ponzinibbio side. So there is a potential for Morono to really take this home and really exploit the opportunities that Ponzinibbio has been presenting lately in his fights. With all that being said, man, I struggle to choose against Ponzinibbio right now. I want to believe that he could pull this off. I mean, if he can't beat Alex Morono, and Alex Morono is a great fighter, he's very good, but you know, we keep talking about there's levels to these things, and I just think Ponzinibbio has been on a different level than Morono has been, but maybe that's not the case anymore. I'm going to ride with Ponzinibbio on this one. This might be the last time, depending on how this performance goes, but I will go Ponzinibbio, unanimous decision.
Okay, Mark.
Pons is favored. He's minus 180. Morono is plus 155. We lost a pretty fun fight in Ponzinibbio and Lawler. I did like that fight, but props to the boy Alex Morono for saving this thing, because this is still pretty interesting in its own right. And he's no easy opponent, especially on short notice, to be honest, because he can do everything. He fights calm, and he fights smart. So that's kind of a tricky guy to game plan for on very short notice like this, because you don't exactly know what he may employ in there and how you want to attack it. So he's on a great run right now. He's won 4 straight. He gets a shot to break through here kind of out of nowhere. Unfortunately for him, it's on short notice, but I'm sure he's jumping at it. But I'm going to make the same point as Omar. Despite the fact that Pons has looked maybe slightly worse than his prime self as of late, I still think there's levels to the game. And Morono's run has been him beating an older Cerrone, David Zawada, Mickey Gall, Matt Semmelsberger. And Pons, while losing, has had back-to-back split decision losses to Jeff Neal and Michel Pereira, who are like top-of-the-line welterweights right now, especially Neal. So if he can hang that close with those guys, I got to trust him here to get this done. I will trust his boxing. I'll trust his power, his grit, and I think he can make sure he gets at least 2 of these rounds. So give me Pons UD.
I like Ponzinibbio as well. I think he overall should be, I don't know, though. I'm not going to say that he's the more talented guy. I mean, like, I don't want to disrespect Morono. Like, Morono's an easily overlooked guy. He's an easily overlooked welterweight because he's not flashy. He's a conservative fighter. He's a safe fighter. He doesn't carry huge power. He's not like he doesn't do like slick, crazy jiu-jitsu. He's good just about everywhere. And his record reflects that. 6 knockouts, 6 submissions, 9 decisions. But yeah, I just feel like Ponzinibbio should have some kind of talent edge, some kind of power edge. But I think this is going to be a close fight. I think this has close fight and has split decision written all over it. So I'm going to take Ponzinibbio by split.
I think one of the main differences, too, is Morono is a hard worker. Morono is the type of kid who will bite down in his mouthpiece, come forward, and he will work. He will push the pace. And Ponzinibbio is definitely much more of a technical fighter. So Ponzinibbio, I think, relies a lot on his range, on his movement, on his ability to plant his feet when he's striking. There's a lot, I think, of technicalities that Ponzinibbio looks for in a fight where Morono will literally just walk forward and throw shots and eat shit and move forward. And sometimes that messes with a lot of technical fighters. So it'll be interesting to see kind of whose skill set comes out on top here, because it's, Morono, like we said, is maybe not at Ponzinibbio's level. That doesn't mean Morono can't win.
Yeah.
Agreed.
All right, co-main time in the lightweight division. The return of Paddy the Baddy Pimblett taking on Jared Flash Gordon. Paddy the Baddy, of course, the 27-year-old out of Liverpool, England, 19-3 as a pro, 6 knockouts, 9 subs, riding a 5-fight win streak coming into this weekend. He is undefeated in the UFC, 3-0 in the UFC. Jared Gordon, out of Queens, New York, 34 years old, 19-5 as a pro, 6 knockouts, 2 subs, 11 decisions, coming off of a win against Leandro Santos. Omar, sticking with you here, give us your take and your pick of Gordon versus Paddy the Baddy.
I think it's safe to say that Jared Gordon at this point is the highest level fight that Paddy Pimblett has fought up until this point, especially in his UFC career. He's had some fights in the past with guys that we've seen in the UFC, but I think we're at a different point now. The rise of Paddy Pimblett has been a slow and steady one, but I think this person, Jared Gordon, I think has a resume with wins and with quality wins and quality losses that it will really give us a proper gauge as to where Paddy Pimblett is in this division and frankly in his skills. I believe in Paddy Pimblett. I know some of us may have varied on that opinion. Some of us may have had stronger thoughts as to whether Paddy would be in the top 15 or top 10 somewhere down the line than others. But I like Paddy, man. There's nothing about the way he fights that has turned me off. I think he's a very aggressive fighter. His length, his use of length in his striking, I think is fantastic. He's not the most creative when it comes to combos. He's not the most active when it comes to stringing a lot of shots together. But he uses his length to keep his reach, and when necessary, he transitions to the ground, whether it's somebody trying to crash in to close that reach, and he immediately ducks under and goes for a takedown of some kind, or he catches a kick or catches a teep, whatever the case is, to then go down to the ground. He has opportunities within his striking that he looks to move down to the ground and work the game that he has there. I think Jared Gordon is the type of guy that will play with Paddy Pimblett, that will give Paddy what he wants in terms of positions on the ground and wanting to go down to the ground to play that whole game. I think Jared believes in his ground game enough to do so. I just think that Paddy Pimblett, when we talk about the mental game, I think Paddy's on a different level right now. I think Paddy is very similar to that kind of Conor McGregor confidence, at least in his mind, that this is his time, this is his era, this is the work that he's put in, and these are the fruits of his labor, and he just needs to go out there and perform the way he knows he can. And I fully believe that he has the ability to do that. Jared Gordon, I think, is the one who needs to show up in this fight if he wants to prove something, to prove that he's just not a guy to get run over in the UFC. Jared Gordon has shown in his losses, though, that there are opportunities on the ground to finish him. And I think those are the type of things that Paddy needs to exploit. I'm going to go with Paddy Pimblett, second round submission.
Okay, Mark.
Like it. So I'll respond quickly first to the Paddy comments that are obviously directed at me. I have always liked Paddy, and I was pumped when he came to the UFC, and I've always thought that he would be like a top 20, 25-ish guy. If we go back, I think I said a similar thing. I just never thought he'd be in the title mix, and then I threw out the bold take of that he wouldn't even be ranked, which I still think may be an accurate take. I don't think I've seen anything yet that makes me say, okay, he probably is going to be a ranked fighter. I don't think – I may change my mind, of course, as he keeps winning, but I'm still in my same place. I think – and for reference, Jared Gordon is my 29th ranked lightweight. So, like, we're here right now. This is the one where if Paddy wins, he kind of ends up right around where I thought he'd end up. He's in the mix. You know, he's 47 in my rankings right now because he hasn't proven anything as of yet. You know, he's fought three kind of randos. I mean, Levitt's a little bit not a rando, but three kind of randos. So this is the one. This is where Paddy Pimblett kind of enters the mix of fighting people who are very relevant. So we will see. He is a big favorite. He's minus 260. Jared Gordon is plus 200. I have never believed in the game of Jared Gordon. So to me, this is not a hard one. I think I've rarely picked Jared Gordon on this show. He did impress me in his last fight. Was it his last fight? Yeah, against Santos. I liked how he looked in that fight. But I just think he doesn't have the game to stop what Paddy does. I'm not picking Paddy's role to stop here by any means. I think he's fast enough and athletic enough to give Gordon some issues on the feet. He's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage, which helps. I think that if Gordon plays on the outside, he's going to get picked apart by Paddy. As much as Paddy's striking technique is not the most clean thing you've ever seen in your life, he can be a dangerous striker, and with a 5-inch reach advantage, he will be. And if Gordon closes that gap and kind of tries to strike in close, I think he's in danger of being wrapped up by Paddy and Paddy taking it back or throwing a leg over him in some fashion and doing what Paddy does. If Gordon tries to grapple, which I agree, I think Gordon will be confident there. I like Paddy's grappling there too. Gordon's skilled down there, but I just think that Paddy is too good of a scrambler and too opportunistic that he's just going to find something if this spends time on the ground. So I think it's a good matchup for Paddy Pimblett. And I think he is the more dangerous finisher, and I think he will finish it. So give me Paddy. I'll say he does something slick to get it back and gets a rear naked choke in round 2.
I am a bit of a Jared Gordon fan. That being said, I think Paddy has too many attributes in his favor. I think he's about 7 years younger, taller, longer, faster. Probably has more power in his hands. I think he's more explosive. I would not be totally surprised though if Jared Gordon gave him a real run for his money. Jared Gordon is competent just about everywhere. He's very competent where Patty is strongest, which is on the ground. So that could be interesting. But Patty also just brings in too much energy, man. Too much energy. So I'm going to keep rolling with Patty as well. I'm going to say Patty's going to get it done by decision this time, by UD.
Mike is so tired that he's officially started whispering. He's trying to slowly put himself to sleep.
Mark, how tall is Jared Gordon? Because they have him listed as 5'9" on SureDog, and they have Patty at 5'10", and that doesn't seem right to me.
I don't feel like Jared Gordon's very tall. That's kind of just about what I thought.
But I feel like Patty's taller, like a good amount taller,
more
not
than
an
an
inch.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I looked up was 5'9" and 5'10" as well. Like I said, the reach was 5 inches, but those are the heights that I saw.
I can't wait to see that stare down because I have a feeling they're.
I'm looking at them both in just if you type it in Google and you look at every link, and every link says 5'10" for Patty, 5'9" for Gordon.
Okay.
Maybe they are closer once they actually stand next to each other, but I just feel like Patty's chin is going to be where Jared Gordon's eyes are, but maybe I'm wrong.
Could be another one of those. We've seen some lately. We will see.
If they are this wrong, we need to fucking fire these people who are using these tape measures or whatever's happening here because they're failing really horribly.
Do you know I already really get annoyed sometimes about the way reach is calculated? Not to go off on a tangent, I don't understand how we haven't addressed this yet. Why is the width of a chest part of reach? I want to know how long dudes' arms are. I don't care if one guy's has 5 more inches of chest. So they say, oh, he has 5 more inches of reach, but their arms are the same size. Yeah. I don't know why we do that.
What do you want to measure from? The pit?
Yes, that's what PFL does. PFL does pit to tip.
Pit to tip.
They also
do
the
shoulder to tip. I forget what they do.
Yeah, the regular one is just the arm span, basically. So from tip to tip all the way across.
That's what UFC does. Yeah.
Right.
Tip to tip.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, I don't like it. Anyway, let's get back to it.
Okay, we've made it to the main event of UFC 282. 282?
Yep.
Yeah, 282.
282.
My bad.
282.
For the vacant UFC Light Heavyweight Championship, Jan Blachowicz taking on Magomed Ankalaev. So just a quick recap here. The current champ, Yuri Prohaska, was originally expected to rematch with Glover Teixeira. They fought back at UFC 275 back in June. Prohaska winning that fight. However, for this rematch, Prohaska pulled out due to a terrible shoulder injury that was apparently so bad that it would require surgery and at least a 6-month rehab period. So he vacated the title, and Teixeira subsequently refused a replacement opponent or a replacement fight against Ankalaev. Therefore, what am I trying to say? Ankalaev and Blachowicz stepped in as the new main event and a vacant title for the light heavyweight championship. So Blachowicz, 39 years old, out of Poland. He is 29-9. 9 knockouts, 9 subs, 11 decisions, coming off of a TKO victory against Alexander Rakic, in which Rakic blew out his knee, of course, in round number 3. And Ankalaev, the 30-year-old out of Dagestan, Russia. He is 17-1. His only loss coming, it was his first fight in the UFC, came at the hands of Paul Craig, who finished him by a triangle choke. He has been undefeated since, and his most recent victory came against Anthony Lionheart-Smith by TKO back in July of this year. Omar, start us off, give us your take, and then your pick.
So the fight is very interesting because you have somebody in Ankalaev who essentially hasn't lost. The fight against Paul Craig, while he did lose, he was beating the shit out of Paul Craig up until the very end when Paul Craig did his Paul Craig thing and got him caught. So I rank Ankalaev a pretty big deal and a real big problem in that division. Jan Blachowicz has shown that he can obviously hang with the elite, but he's also shown that he could fall as well. Ankalaev seems to be a little bit sharper everywhere. He seems to be very good everywhere. A lot of times when you think of Dagestani, you think of heavy wrestling, you think of good wrestling, significant elite wrestling. But Ankalaev is good everywhere. Not only is his wrestling good, but his striking is significantly good. And personally, I think it's better than Jan's striking is. I just think Magomed is better everywhere. I feel bad for Jan because at 39 years old, I don't know how many more opportunities Jan's going to have to try to capture gold or even continue in MMA, frankly. But I think that Magomed Ankalaev is a tall order. He's a prospect that we've seen coming for a long time, and I think it was just a matter of time before he got this opportunity. And I can't imagine that any of us thought that once Ankalaev got this opportunity, he wouldn't be able to capitalize on it. So I'm going to go with Ankalaev. I actually think he stops Jan. I'm going to go with KO round 2.
Okay, Mark.
Yeah, that was well said in terms of the rise of Ankalaev. Like, I feel like it's been a while where it's been like, he's coming. Like, next step. We know he's going to get to the next step. Here's the next one. We know he's going to get to that. Like we knew this day was coming. We knew he'd be in a title fight. He is a pretty big favorite. He's minus 275. Jan, the former champ, is plus 215.
Wow.
I do think that Jan can cause Magomed some issues on the feet. He does have a 3-inch reach advantage there too. I just think he can provide some type of looks and power shots that Magomed has not had to necessarily deal with so far. I know you see guys like Thiago Santos on the resume, but it's kind of the shell of Thiago Santos. I think Jan is a different level of threat standing across from Magomed that he's going to have to kind of adapt to. But it sounds like such a silly commentary, but Magomed Ankalaev is just a really difficult guy to beat in a fight. Like, he's made out of rocks. He fights so smart and so patient and refuses to deviate from a game plan. He doesn't do anything dumb in there. He doesn't have holes. He's a great wrestler. He's a great striker. He doesn't give you opportunities. It's just a really hard puzzle to solve. He'll fight from range. I think he'll keep himself safe as much as he can. He'll look for openings in the wrestling if he feels that he needs to or that it's there. And, I mean, you would think he forgot his wrestling in the Santos fight, but I guess he didn't need it. But I got to think he employs it here. You know, we got a title on the line. I think maybe against Santos he was trying to make sure he looked good so he can get an opportunity. Like, he's here now. I don't think he fucks around. I think he knows the wrestling is potentially his easiest path to victory. So I do think we see it. I think Jan could have his moments. He absolutely could. I think he'll keep it competitive, but I just think it's Magomed's time right now. And I could see the fight slipping away from Jan even as it goes on. I will say Magomed Ankalaev, round 4 TKO with ground and pound.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, we're unanimous. I think this is a fight as awesome as Blachowicz is, and as much of a sort of a late career surprise he was for so many. This is Ankalaev's time, and I think he's just gonna kind of pull away as the fight goes on, and he's just gonna be better, and he should be better everywhere. To me, the one area that he just has to be careful, of course, is Blachowicz's power, but I think he's just so good. He's so good defensively. I think he will stay away from Blachowicz's power. And I see a clear 5-round pulling away. It becomes a little bit more dominant in the later rounds. And Ankalaev wins a clear UD and new, and now the UFC light heavyweight champion. And he will be, I don't know what will be next for him. Maybe he waits for Priaulx to come back from his shoulder. Maybe Priaulx is out so long that he's going to defend it at some point. But
yeah, I think it'd probably be Glover. I think whoever wins this probably fights Glover.
Glover? Okay, yeah. Probably right. Anklayev's the real deal, man. That's also a very interesting matchup with Glover against Ankleyev. But, we made it.
1 a.m.
I honestly didn't think I was going to make it. It may not be a surprise. I will not be doing trivia.
Yeah, I knew that was coming.
Canceled. Trivia's canceled.
Trivia is canceled.
So is bingo.
My body needs to lay down. My back doesn't want to hold up my neck and head anymore.
Yeah, dude. You're the one who has to drive home.
Yeah. What time do you guys wake up today?
What time did I wake up today?
Yeah.
Probably.
My wife woke me up.
6 o'clock hour.
What'd you say?
My wife woke me up to go work out this morning. So.
When did you wake up?
5:30.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's an early one.
Oh yeah, no, I was not up at 5:30.
It's been a day. It's been a day.
Jesus Christ.
All right, folks. Well, enjoy the fights this weekend between Bellator and UFC action. It should be plenty to talk about next week when we reconvene.
Sir, should be a good weekend.
Fun one.
Later, people.
Later.
Peace.
Peace.